I'm saying.
Yes, you're doing that.
Yeah.
I won't mention it.
No,
but,
don't.
yeah.
So it's good fun.
Apparently, it's about time they brought Run Around back. That's
Thank
all
you.
I'm saying.
Run around tomorrow.
Now.
Can I just say something now then? I've just been told by Ricky,
Yes.
one of the management out there, that I've got to the point where I keep repeating myself and they fear the onset of dementia is happening.
You said that a moment ago.
Did I? Yes. So ITV tomorrow and the show's on in a bit. And you are, off to see my wife?
No, day off.
You said that a minute ago. Hey!
Stand by, Jeremy Cole here in the other side of the news at 4, which is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Just gone 4 o'clock. It's Wednesday afternoon. This is Talk Drive, the home of free speech and common sense. JK at the controls till 7. A big thank you to Ian Collins. Back, of course, tomorrow from 1 o'clock. The Housewife's Choice. Well, Mrs. Carl's choice, anyway. Listen, day 3 of trying to make the voice work. If you might have seen all the stuff about hospital crises and people with this flu, I had it over Christmas. It is on the way out, but if the voice breaks, I apologise right here, right now. Listen, so much to talk about, and as ever on Drive, plenty of calls, plenty of guests. Most of all, your involvement, please. 0344 499 1000. That is the number. You can WhatsApp a voice note. 0344 499 1000, or ring that number to Jodie. Log your call. We'll get you on between now and 7. That is a promise. We'll take your text messages as well. Always delighted to get them to the show. 872222. Start your message with the word talk. In a minute, Matt Vickers, Shadow Crime Policing and Fire Minister. He'll talk about the grooming gang scandal that has taken this country quite rightly by storm. You might have heard me just saying to Ian, I don't I don't understand. I'm being completely honest. We've got Conservative MPs moaning at Labour who won't allow a national inquiry. We've got Starmer telling Labour MPs to vote against it. Kemi Badenoch saying there should be one. We've got Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, being abused by Elon Musk. Turns out today she abused people in 2015 about the very same subject. I don't understand, in a civilised society, why not having a national inquiry is absolutely the right goddamn thing to do. We need to get to the bottom of it. And as I said 10 minutes ago to Ian, and I'm not into conspiracy theories, but it does, to me, leave a feeling that there has to be more than this. This has to be a cover-up. There has to be a reason why sane, moral human beings cannot understand that young kids being raped by men, I don't care the colour of that man's skin, it's rape. And if you are abusing children, you should face the consequences. And we'll talk about that in great detail. Interestingly, actually, just about half an hour before we came on air, Jess Phillips hinting at there could be an inquiry. So what is the position, Jess Phillips? What is the position, Keir Starmer? What do you think? Is it not right and proper that we have one? For the sake of those victims? Are we just going to get rolling into a discussion about what's right politically? What's right morally is what I want to know. 0344 419 1000. Loads of stuff going on today. Police hunting the 14-year-old killer. The killer of the 14-year-old stabbed to death yesterday on a bus. This is in the very city that Sadiq Khan has just been knighted for his services to knife crime. Are you bleeding joking? Another child innocently killed yesterday on a bus in London, and they've done nothing about it. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about universities boycotting. I love this. Defence companies feel threatened and are not going to university fairs because of fear of protests and abuse from students who think they know everything. That's brilliant. We'll talk more about Trump today as well. The man who wants to I want Greenland, I want Panama, I want Canada. That can be the 51st state. God, he's newsworthy. 0344 419 1000. Talk Drive is on until 7. We kick off, as we said, with the Shadow Crime Policing and Fire Minister, Conservative MP for Stockton West, Matt Vickers. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jeremy. Did you get out nice for Christmas?
No, I had a terrible Christmas. Thanks for asking. I had this flu. I've been ill for 3 weeks. I didn't come out till Monday. My voice is not going well, and I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself. But don't you worry about it.
You were spreading this around to various women during the festive break. Was that true?
So there is a rumour going, which seems to have gone everywhere, that I gave it to Isabel Oakeshott. I might have pecked her on the cheek at a party, and she went down with it. Yeah, I don't know. How are you? Have you had a good Christmas, my old son?
I've had a cracking Christmas. I got, lots of pairs of socks. Do you know what the world's press hasn't picked up on this week? Did you notice that Lynx have rebranded? They've got new stenches and new fragrances, and it all sounds very upmarket. It was the highlight of my Christmas day.
I think you have to be very careful if you're admitting on national radio that you like. What is it called? Africa by Lynx. Anyway, Matt,
probably not now. It's got some swanky new name.
It's probably not allowed to be called Africa because that's racist. It's probably got to be called something else. I mean, there we go. Mate, can I? Are you a father?
I'm not. You asked me this last time.
Sorry. Can I see? This is what they say. I've got the beginnings of dementia. Can I ask you, from my point of view, in terms of me as a father, about this whole grooming gang scandal? We've got everybody jumping on Jess Phillips, who, as the safeguarding minister, is saying, no, we don't need another inquiry. We've had one, despite the fact that what was said in that inquiry has not been implemented. Hear me out. There are tweets resurfacing today of her saying in 2014, where she called former Workers' Party of Britain and Rochdale MP George Galloway a rape apologist, right? I don't happen to be a fan of George Galloway's, but if you're in the kitchen, be careful what you say, because it's going to come back and bite you on the backside. We've got Starmer saying no to an inquiry. We've got your leader, Badenoch, saying we should have it. The fact of the matter is, this is not entirely at Keir Starmer's door. The fact that he comes out and says no inquiry, this is right-wing paranoia, there's a bandwagon, that's fundamentally wrong. But let me ask you this, because the one thing you know as a Conservative MP is that your party hacked the British people off massively, to the point where many of them are still not listening. Why in the name of God, Matt Vickers, was what was said in these reports not implemented by the Tory government in the last 14 years? Because this is not a 6-month-old problem. This has been going on for decades and is a disgusting, in my opinion, stain on this society, this country. It really is.
I think you're entirely right. It's gone on for way too long. There's been way too many incidents of it. The last report, it all seems to be getting a bit muddy the way that we're referring to this in the press. The last inquiry was around child sexual exploitation. Didn't home in on grooming gangs. In fact, it suggested, well, it name-checked 6 towns where this might have happened. We now know that it was in more than 50 towns.
How many? How many?
50.
And can we, I don't want to offend you, but can we call it what it is? These are not grooming gangs, these are rape gangs. I heard this morning, and it's true, they're rape gangs. These men, and I don't give a damn what colour of their skin is, they are raping innocent children. This is not an informed choice, as some leaked email allegedly says. These are men systematically trading in the sexual exploitation of young children. And of course, the problem, Matt, is, right, I mean, in my world, if you rape a child, right, you don't deserve to live in a civilised society. That is my opinion, and I'm entitled to that. But what I don't understand, because it won't come out of my mind and won't go away, is that if successive governments, politicians, councillors, social workers, heads of police, whatever it is, have turned a blind eye because nothing's been done, that smacks to me of a much deeper problem. That's the issue here.
Yeah, well, do you know what? The most vile, horrific abuse you could ever imagine. You read some of the transcripts of what's gone on there. Is beyond. You don't think it could happen in the UK? I mean, the stories about it happened in Middlesbrough, around the corner from me. I'm just stunned by the fact that this goes on, that it's been allowed to happen.
Are you telling me that the Tory government didn't know about this, but these reports were filed? You're going to say that there wasn't enough, but did your government do enough?
I think there was lots of trust in lots of agencies. I wouldn't say that nothing's been done. I think it's wrong to say nothing's been done. In fact, under Rishi Sunak, we saw this grooming gangs task force came back. 550 people were arrested, 4,000 young people put into protection. Stuff has been getting done, but the reality is more and more questions emerge. We're seeing, a council now asking the government, please, God, do a national inquiry. We can't cope with this. We need it to be looked at properly nationally. We need answers to all of these questions. We're seeing big question marks emerge online about what the police have and haven't failed to do, about what social services and councils haven't failed to do, and about what politicians, councillors and MPs have previously done or should have done and haven't done. You need to answer those questions. You need to find the solutions. We need to know the answer. We need to know how many victims there are. We need to know how systematic this is. We need to know where it's taking place. The fact we're talking about 6 towns and we're now talking about 50 tells you no one's got a grip on this problem.
For me, one of my biggest criticisms of this current government is their seeming... I don't believe they're proud to be British. I don't think they're proud of this country. This, to me, is one of the most disgusting things I've ever read. And we've talked about the infected blood scandal on this station. We've talked quite rightly about the post office scandal. In fact, we're talking about that before anybody else. This, I mean, if you were stood, as I said to Ian Collins, anywhere, if you and I were stood looking at a foreign country that seemingly said it's okay to get away with raping innocent children if you are of a certain religious background, hear me out, or a particular trait to your character. If I said to you in that same country that paedophiles get away, like Hugh Edwards, with not going to jail and get just unconditional suspended sentences so they're still free to roam and look at disgusting images of kids, we'd both say that was barbaric, Matt. We'd say that was completely barbaric. And what I find frightening is that people are looking at the United Kingdom now and going, geez, what's happening there?
Well, you hear the stories today about the fact that some of the people involved with this are still walking the streets. Some of them foreign national offenders. They shouldn't even be in the bloody country. They should be rotting in jail. And if they've come from elsewhere, they should be sent back immediately. If you're the victim of one of these abusers, you should not bump into them in the shopping centre. They should not be delivering your pizza. It's just not a thing. It just should not be accepted, and we cannot allow it to be accepted. That's why we need this inquiry. We need to get...
Do you accept that actually the Tories should have done more? I mean, there should have been an inquiry during the Tories' 14 years. There must have been. There's got to have been. Because
we had an inquiry of sorts, but more does need to be done. More definitely needs to have been done and to be done. We're going to have question marks like this overhanging public officials who are still in office.
Yeah.
They need to be if they've covered this up. There's two reasons that have come forward as to why people haven't acted, why this thing's been allowed to go on, why it's been brushed under the carpet, why people have turned a blind eye. The argument is either people are too scared to speak about certain things because they think they might be branded as racist, they might be culturally insensitive, they might be all those things. Well, that's just bloody ridiculous. And if we're allowing people to be chastised in that way and not fulfill their job out of fear of that, then something has gone horribly, horribly wrong in this country. But it's worse than that. Because if you hear what Simon Danczuk said, who was a Labour MP, he said that as an MP, he was told by the chairman of the Labour Party, you must not mention the ethnicity of these offenders because it affects our electoral success. It will prevent certain communities voting for us. Well, that just stinks. It's the worst of the worst. And
we saw it in the last election. I made reference to this yesterday. In the last election, 5 independent MPs won seats off Labour in the Red Wall, standing entirely on a platform of Gaza. Nothing else, right? Let's not get into that debate. 5 Muslim men, that's right. They got elected. That's the way it is. There is, of course, the suspicion that Sir Keir Starmer would be concerned that he would lose that vote. I'm talking, though, as a father, and about morality. There can't be anybody, whether you lose your seat or not, who thinks raping a child is an acceptable look in any civilised society, let alone the United Kingdom, Matt. That's what I'm saying.
In both fronts, if you aren't up to doing your job because you're scared somebody's going to call you names and brand you as something, well, you shouldn't be in the job. And if you're standing for election and don't do what you know is right, then you shouldn't be standing for election.
Well, you're the shadow policing.
That's why we need the inquiry.
Yeah, but you're the shadow crime policing and fire minister for the opposition. Let's talk about the police. We know that, of course, everybody talked about Rochdale and Rotherham and Telford, but you said it just now. This is rolling out to more cities. But at least in Rotherham, and I have every right to say this, it took 8 years. It was British Pakistani men against young white girls, and the police said, as this evolved, that they were concerned that if they'd been, what's the right phrase here? Not more vigilant, quicker with their inquiries, more I don't know the right word because it escapes me, right? If that was the case, okay, then they were concerned that it would create cultural division. Where I come from, right, if you break the law certainly as appallingly as this with young children, it doesn't matter where you come from or what you do or the colour of your skin or your religion, you should be incarcerated because it's morally disgusting.
Incarcerated. If you've just arrived, you should be sent back.
Yeah.
It should not be allowed to happen on the streets of this country. But a lot of what we talk about with the police, you were mentioning earlier about knife crime. One of the reasons knife crime is such a big... In fact, I'm going to do a plug for somebody. I was recently reading Boris's book, Unleashed, and he tells you about how he drove down knife crime in London. It's all the way back up now under Sadiq Khan.
Of course it is. Sir Sadiq, don't be so disrespectful.
Sir Sadiq, very true.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? But one of the ways in which it was driven around was through stop and search. The only way you get knives out of the hands of people who carry them around central London is by having a policeman, tapping them on the shoulder, checking the pockets and taking the bloody knife off them. And there are consequences for carrying a knife. And that's the only way you solve it. If, however, you're too scared to do stop and search because you might offend somebody, you might make somebody feel... The only way to take knives off the street is stop and search, and you've got to do it without fear or favour, without any discrimination. Whoever you are, if there's a suspicion you carry a knife, you should be searched, it should be taken off you, and you should feel the full force of the law for carrying it. It's all around this fear of offending people, about cultural sensitivity. The world has gone mad, and the consequences are there for the next generation of young people growing up with some of this grooming horrors of grooming gangs that are going on, with more knives on the streets. It's completely wrong. We need to get a grip on the damn thing.
Very quickly, because apparently I've been told you have to go. Is that right? I thought you liked to speak to me, but apparently you're very important.
I've got a DL at half. So I've got to go a big jog after this, but yeah.
All right, listen, very, very quickly. I mean, you talk about... And I agree with you. I mean, there's a story today. Defence firms have stopped attending university careers protests because students go, oh, it's all the military, you're all violent. I don't know what's happened to the moral ethos, the moral fabric of what the United Kingdom is. I don't know where it goes from here. I don't just blame the Labour Party. I blame a lot of that woke rubbish on many, many people. But I do think somebody needs to get a grip. And it is interesting people joke and laugh, but if you look at Trump, who stood up yesterday and said, I want Greenland and I want the Panama Canal and I want the Gulf of Mexico's going to be the Gulf of America and Canada's going to be the 51st state, and if you don't pay 5% GDP, I'm leaving NATO. God, we could do with somebody with a pair of cojones like him in this country, couldn't we, Matt?
We very much could. Well, come as you go, come as you go. But I think actually what's worrying about this defence story, about defence companies being afraid to go onto our university campuses, what the hell is going on our university campuses if the people who run defence firms are afraid to go in? We're letting people take over these educational spaces that are supposed to be safe. They're supposed to be places where people can come grow and develop as individuals. And these guys are going in there to offer these young people opportunities. It's madness.
It is complete madness. We love having you on the show. We know you're a big cheese now. We'll let you go. We say Happy New Year. Matt Vickers, Shadow Crime Policing and Fire Minister on Talk Drive, 4:20 Wednesday afternoon. Don't forget you can do a voice note. It's a WhatsApp thing. Ryan likes it because he can play, oh, let's put them together. 0344 419 1000. Rob, shoot.
The report, the inquiry that took 7 years and cost £100 million that everybody on the left keeps referring to. Did you know Maggie Oliver, who should be Dame Maggie Oliver, reported that of the 7 years that it took to spend that 100 million, they spent 10 days on grooming gangs and only had one victim's testimony. So we definitely need an inquiry.
Well, Rob, who's phoned us, kindly not sure where I left that voice note, Maggie Oliver, who should be Dame Maggie Oliver, is next on the Jeremy Kyle Show. It's Drive, it's 4:20, we're coming back.
Well, they've been in office for about 6 months, haven't they, really? They've had 14 years to get ready for office. I mean, in fairness, I suppose in reality, they've had 3 or 4 years to develop current and meaningful plans for the future of the NHS. And I must say that I was surprised that they're going to take until the spring to develop a plan for the NHS, and then there's going to be a whole load of consultation and mucking about.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 4:22 Wednesday afternoon. It's the home of common sense and free speech. This is Talk. It's Drive with JK. Thank you for your text, James in Manchester. Does anyone else find it curious how loudmouth Gobby Rayner is suddenly super silent? Maybe it's to do with the demographic of her constituency. Mick, regarding the grooming gangs, I agree with you. How high does it go? What are they hiding and who are they hiding it from? Great show. Thank you very much indeed. Stuart in Perthshire. Jez, if Trump took Canada and changed the 10 provinces and 3 territories to states, then they'd have 63 states, and that would mean a new flag with 13 more stars. That's before Greenland and the UK. Don't start. Matt Cook, good afternoon. Jez, simple for me. If you rape a child, then you deserve to die. Any harm to children is unforgivable. This goes right to the upper echelons of our society, and that is what Labour wants to hide. Thanks, says Matt in Ulverston. Good evening to Helen. An in-depth inquiry, Jez, is not possible. We cannot trust the police, councils and social workers to mark their own homework and not protect their colleagues. We need someone from another country with no affiliation to any department to do this. And finally, Jack is in North Yorkshire. Good afternoon, Jez. Can someone genuinely explain to me, please, how we have a democracy when two-tier Keir can insist that all of his MPs vote with what he wants? I've never understood that. Surely that makes Parliament a dictatorship. Everyone in a party should be able to vote freely without fear or favour. You would think so, Jackie, but that's not the case. As this grooming gang story has gathered pace, there really is one person who has been talked about repeatedly. A lady who was brave enough when this kicked off many years ago to go to her bosses and say, we need to prosecute, and was told, no, you can't do it. She gave up her job. She became a campaigner. I absolutely agree with everybody who says she should be Dame Maggie Oliver. Maggie, Happy New Year. Great to have you on Drive. How are you?
Happy New Year, Jeremy. A bit frazzled. I've done a lot of talking. People are probably sick of the sound of my voice.
Nobody could be, and the respect and admiration that people have for you has finally shown itself in the last few days. Maggie, I know we're going to talk about things that you've repeated many times, but I feel like we should be like a dog with a bone. But again, I'm going to try it differently perhaps than other people. As a father, what I don't understand, and I don't care if you're Muslim, English, Australian, Polish, Icelandic, I don't care. Where I come from, the most abhorrent thing that you could do, let's not even call them grooming gangs, they're rape gangs, is rape innocent children, blight their lives, both sexually, mentally, physically, in whatever way. And the longer this goes on and we spend our time saying, well, Jess Phillips in 2015 called, George Galloway a rape apologist, and Elon Musk's wading in and the government is saying no, and is it because he was the director of public prosecution, Stummer? All of that to me is, excuse my French, B-O-double. I'm not interested in that. I want to know why people are covering up what I am beginning to think must go so high and so deep it can be the only explanation. And I'm not into conspiracy theory, but you have to see that point of view, don't you?
You absolutely do, Jeremy. And I'm on your page from the day I started to try to understand why these children were being abandoned and people were turning away. People in positions of power. I've never understood it, because for me, the law is there to prosecute, to protect children, to prosecute paedophiles, and to be equal. And every police officer who joins promises to act with impartiality, with integrity, to uphold the law. And when I saw what was happening, and I went to the chief constable at the time, Peter Fye, he didn't want to hear. I have seen institution after institution try to cover up the truth, to pretend, to close down the conversation. There was an elephant in the room, and I tried to cut out all the noise. But at the end of the day, this is about understanding why this particular crime is so prevalent, why we haven't got a grip of it, and why we constantly try to close down the conversations. And what I would say, Jeremy, is today, we've got an absolute prime example of that. We've got the whip being, cracked to tell people what they have to do. And I've just caught the last bit of your police and crime person from Parliament. And this isn't a personal attack on him, but why was he not saying those things when the Conservatives were in power?
That's what I said to him. He had 14 years. I said that, and I agree. I'm going to go back to something you've said. Because when you do a show like this, the beauty of being able to say what you feel on a station that backs you is great, but you can end up sounding like a dog with a bone. Cover up the truth. You saw. You were there. You were at GMP. Just for people who... I mean, how can nobody know Dame Maggie Oliver? She set up the Maggie Oliver Foundation directly because you became the whistleblower on those Rochdale grooming gang cases. It now seems it wasn't 6 towns. It might be 50. I ask you this, right? Why do you believe that... whatever level, be it chief constable, head of social services, because let's not blame the average policeman and woman, it's not for them to make that decision, be it higher than that, why do you believe that this has been forced upon us, if you like, and isn't looked into? Is it because this does go higher and many people might be implicated who don't want to be implicated?
I think there's so many threads to this, Jeremy. I think there is absolutely a cover-up at the highest level. I think that they are mistaken because I think that the country actually understands what's going on and sees what's going on. I don't think the reasons really matter, but we've had 20 years of missed opportunities, more. And in all those years, it's survivors' voices who have been squashed out of this conversation, and it's repeated generations of children that have suffered. And I'm not saying, I never say, you know, child abuse in our country comes from every direction, including the Church of England, as we've just seen with Canterbury, you know. But these institutions are more interested in covering up the truth than in getting to the root cause of the problem and addressing it. And what it does, it sends these conversations underground. And I do believe that this is going to lead to complete civil unrest unless we have a change of attitude and allow people who understand these problems to engage in a conversation. And by that, I also mean within the Muslim community, because there is a reason why this happens. And then as we see increased levels of immigration, I want to understand how we prevent this getting worse, how we open the conversation and build community cohesion. And by silencing those who are concerned and worried and frightened about the future of the country, in order to address those fears, we have to understand so that we can resolve and address. And when we
I couldn't agree more. And I wanted... There's a couple of things. I mean, the first thing that you said there, obviously, in Rotherham, in Rochdale, it was British Pakistani men, OK? And the police were later saying, and this is a fact, that they were concerned that cultural tension, arguments, whatever, could surface if they were perhaps too... I'm still struggling for the right word, too forceful in their inquiries, which to me is disgusting, because the rape of a child, it shouldn't matter where you come from, you should be incarcerated. But if you and I, as I said earlier to Matt Vickers, were in a different country, and we were on a news station, and we were looking at the United Kingdom, and you brought one up that I didn't know. Well, I did know, I'd forgotten. The Archbishop of Canterbury had to resign recently because of many examples of child abuse within the Church of England that had been covered up. Paedophiles like that dreadful newsreader, whose name I don't even want to talk about, actually, and other accomplices, who watch and look and download the most vile images of children, walk free with a suspended sentence. We then look at these grooming gangs, these cover-ups, and you and I would look at that country and we'd say, that's bloody barbaric. That's medieval, that's outrageous. This is the United Kingdom, which is why every day I get up and I think about this, I think it has to be a cover-up. Why? You know far more than me. Why do you think it's a cover-up? Why do you think this is an issue? Is it because, I mean, for example, you made the point about Muslims, right? Why don't the 99.9% of fantastic Muslim people in this country who work hard and behave within the rules of the law stand up, or their leaders, and decry what's going on? Would that not help the situation?
It would help, Jeremy. I don't know why. I think that there is fear in that community. I was talking to an imam about a month ago, and you would have thought I was, you know, his hero worshipping me. He's the kind of person that needs to be engaged in these conversations. It's not just in this kind of the grooming gang trial, though, Jeremy, that we have cover-ups. We've just had Mohammed Al-Fayed, Harrods, you know, covering up that for years. We had the Jimmy Savile, the BBC covering that up. We've got the police covering up the ethnicity and the class of the children. That there are so many institutions that will not get a grip of the uncomfortable truth. But the other part of this issue is that when people do try to speak out, like I did, we become the enemy. There are many whistleblowers and people in public service who feel that they want to speak out, and yet they have to make a choice between their own financial security, their career and their job. You know, I was told senior officers make decisions, you do as you're told, and if you can't do that, you're in the wrong job. We need to completely reverse that thinking. I was their best friend. I wasn't there to cause trouble because I couldn't understand that what was going on was known at the top. I now know it was. And I've seen repeated abuses of power. I've seen the National Abuse Inquiry be a complete cover-up when it came to organised networks. The man you've just said quoted what I've said this week. It's true. You know, 2 weeks for what has been a national problem for decades. Even
how high do you think it goes, Maggie? How high?
To the top, to the absolute top. And for me, the book stops at the top. With Keir Starmer, with the leader of the opposition, with chief constables, we need to bring victims and survivors into this conversation. You know, calling for a public inquiry is fine, but the question has to be, who is going to lead it? Yeah. What do they want to uncover?
Somebody said earlier it should be, and I like that Mark in their own homework comment, because I think that's where the police get it wrong on so many occasions. This has to be an outside person, probably somebody from another country. I mean, the whole thing is so repugnant. Here's a lovely text, though, from David Thomas. Maggie Oliver, how has this wonderful woman managed to keep sane? The frustration of cover-up that she's lived with since getting involved would drive any normal person insane. She's a national treasure and deserves recognition. A lot of people, Maggie Oliver, are blown away by the consideration, the effort and the thought you put into this. But this is deep inside your heart and soul, and you're not going to give up, are you?
No, I'm not giving up, because when you make the decision to tell the truth, and you're doing it for the people that I see every day in my foundation who have lost their lives fighting to be heard. You know, I have got the honour of being able to tell the truth, and I'm not frightened anymore. And the truth is what will get us through this in the end. And I'm afraid that politicians, those in positions of power, from my perspective, are more interested in their own position than in honouring these children.
But you see, there's an interesting thing, right? So here's an interesting thing. Keir Starmer, by anybody's standards, has had the most appalling first 6 months. He's the least popular Prime Minister in the history of the world, it seems, which is slightly ironic when you consider that Liz Truss came before him. I would have thought that any sensible person would have thought this is an absolute way of doing the right thing by the British people, in brackets, those victims first and foremost, because you're the first person that's talked about victims in the last 2 days. It's all about tweets and who did this. I would have thought that somebody would have said to Keir Starmer, this is the right thing to do. By denying a public inquiry, of course, everybody's now saying he's got something to hide from when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. And so we carry on. What for you is the very bare minimum, Maggie Oliver, that needs to happen?
The immediate implementation of all the 20 recommendations that were all we got actually out of the National Abuse Inquiry that took 7 years, I think £200 million. You know, victims' voices squashed out of it, but we did come out with some really good recommendations. It shouldn't have taken Elon Musk to bring this onto an international stage for 3 years later to suddenly say, oh, well, we might implement 3 of those recommendations. We don't know when, and we don't know about the other 17. That's what makes me really nervous about another public inquiry, because recommendations are only that. They're not obligations. We get words, and I don't want to push this another 10 years down the football pitch. I want to see action. I want to see victims heard. I want to see the truth out there. I want to record ethnicity. I want to record jobs of offenders, jobs of children, because I believe there's a class issue with this as well. Those at the top would never be saying these things if it was their children. These are working class children who do not matter. Well, they do matter, and they do matter to me. And if it was my daughter who had been through this, I would kill the abuser. If they weren't dealt with properly, you know, I am... And you know what makes me even more angry? Hearing, and I'm not a political person, Jeremy, I'm not, but hearing Keir Starmer say the other day that this has been hijacked by the far-right extremists. And I am not a far-right extremist. Victims and survivors are incandescent with rage. They are sick of being ignored and failed and blamed and judged. He's in a position now where he can do something about it. And yet he still, you know, tries to tar those who were calling out the problem. He needs to change his attitude and do something. And at the very barest minimum, immediately implement the 20 recommendations we've got, and then speak to victims and survivors and see what else they feel is needed. Not listen to politicians and people with an axe to grind or an agenda. Proper people who have lived and breathed this.
You know something? Been doing this for nearly 3 years, and I will repeat what I always say. You're an amazing lady. Absolutely, you should get recognised for what you've done. But just listening to you, I could listen to you forever, because there are millions of people in this country who not only agree with you, but thank you from the bottom of their hearts for being that voice for those very victims that we're talking about. And it is always an absolute pleasure. I know you frazzle with everybody, but Maggie, always great to have you. We call you Dame Maggie Oliver, founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation, the whistleblower of the Rochdale grooming gang cases, of course, the woman who had to resign from GMP and has made it her life's aim to sort this out. Everybody else jumping on the bandwagon. She put it absolutely brilliantly. What do you make of that? 0344 419 1000. Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
From 10, Mike at 6. Good morning, Glory. This is JK on Drive. Now, what is it, 19 minutes to 5. Peter Carwell, and just a tick straight to the phone lines in Staffordshire, Vernon. 2 minutes only. Go.
Jeremy, pointless to have a national inquiry. It will take too long. Heads should roll. People should be imprisoned immediately. We know who the people are who did this. They need to be deported or put in prison, and it doesn't matter who they are. Personally, I get the military involved. I wouldn't trust the police as far as I could throw them. Have a good evening. It's a great show, Jeremy.
You're a good man. Thank you, Vernon. Peter Carwell, a very good evening. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jeremy. Nice to see you.
Happy New Year to you, Jeremy. Listen, doing fantastic. He's got drive time tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. He's got it. Can I just put to you, and I know I'm a father and you're not, and I know that we'll talk from a political point of view. Jess Phillips has not today ruled out a national inquiry. We've seen tweets about George Galloway, and there's a 3-line whip and stuff. Morally, as a people, as a country, this is an absolutely appalling, abhorrent look.
Yes,
and I am sick to death every day of listening to politicians arguing the toss about who should have done. This is an absolute stain on our society. It's revolting.
It absolutely is, but the question, and it is a political question, is what should we do about it? Because there was a big inquiry into not this exact issue, but related issues on child
Maggie Oliver said no victims were allowed to speak.
Child sexual exploitation. 20 recommendations were brought on that. Rochdale was only mentioned once within that, and they're having a row over whether the Conservatives should have implemented that. They said they were going to. They accepted 18 of those 20 recommendations.
When was the report given to the Conservative Party?
2022. They had 18 months to do something about it. They did nothing.
Why? What's their excuse?
I don't know. Well, they're saying they did lots of other things. Labour are saying that they are moving at pace, as they put it, to implement this. Well, they've had 6 months. You would have thought the Home Office would have thought, right, you got Jess Phillips, Labour assured of a victory, she's going to come in, you'd be ready on day one, push the button, off you go. But that didn't happen. And the fact is that the question is not so much about the issue. I think everybody agrees the issue is abhorrent and needs to be dealt with. The question is how you deal with that and how you deal with that properly. And the question is, do you have a national inquiry or do you have local inquiries? So I spoke actually to a KC who did the Telford inquiry last Friday on Drive, and he made a very compelling case saying that if you do things locally, often you get more out of it. But a national inquiry is what a lot of people want, a lot of victims want that. They want their voices to be heard.
And you would have thought, would you not, that the voice of the victim is the most important thing. What I want to keep going back to, like a dog, because we talked about... Look, we'll be very honest. I told you the story about the old man. I told it yesterday about the Royal Yacht Britannia 30 years ago. If you're me, you sit here and you think, this could be anybody involved in this. This could be royalty, lords, this could be MPs, prime ministers, cabinet ministers, this could be bosses of the police, social services, this could be bigwigs left, right, centre. Because to me, the essence of... I mean, I'm not having a go at you. What the debate is how we should deal with it. No, the debate is this is so goddamn abhorrent that we should get these people, however high they are up, and drag them. So do we need an inquiry by somebody who's not involved in this country, somebody from afar, as somebody said before?
That's perhaps not a bad idea.
Vernon just said, what about the military being involved because he doesn't trust the police, for Christ's sake?
And this is a big question of who do we trust. We don't trust the police to deal with this. We don't trust a lot of local leaders in places like Oldham and elsewhere. Oldham almost didn't trust themselves. They said, let's have an independent inquiry into what we have done or what previous people have done or not done. And it's not just about who is actually carrying out these crimes. It's about cover-ups. It's about people nodding a wink. It's about communities as well saying, well, we know this is going on, but we're not going to get involved. All a bit too difficult.
We know this is going on. I go back to it. I'm not allowed to say it on air. I read a story yesterday about what they did to this girl. No, but even, I'm not expecting you. You're a broadcaster. I can't even speak about that. It just makes me want to go. And I'm with Maggie. Let me tell you, if that was one of my daughters, I would be in prison for life. And I can say that with my hand on my heart and not apologise. Literally.
You're right, Jeremy, and I think people are right to be very, very angry about this. It's gone on for such a long period of time, and it hasn't been dealt with properly. And we were told lessons are learned, things are done, and they're not. And the worry with a new inquiry, and if there is one, that's fair enough, and if victims, Jess Phillips has said if victims want one, that's not off the table.
It's a change in position from 24 hours ago, isn't it?
It is. Well, she's given an interview to Sky News where she said that. The point is that what actually happens then, when an inquiry happens and it reports and it takes evidence, well, if there are criminal procedures, if there are arrests to be made, that doesn't need an inquiry. If someone goes to the police and says this has happened, well, that should be investigated properly. And the problem is that there isn't the faith in the police forces. There isn't the faith from so many victims in places like Oldham, Telford, many places in the north of England, that they can actually go to the authorities and things will happen.
How bad is that?
Because there's so many...
How bad is that?
It's terrible. It's horrendous. It shouldn't happen.
Man.
And we have a situation where even though some action is taken, well, often it's not enough. We know that these sexual crimes are sometimes not... You know, they're prosecuted, but they don't have the outcomes that people want. Wow. It happens far too much. And the point is that there are a lot of people who want more to be done, but you need to work out the what. And to me, that I don't know if that's an inquiry or not. I'm not against an inquiry. I'm not for an inquiry. My point is that if there's criminality, if you go to the police, that should be investigated.
I would hunt down every single person, whether it's from the top to the bottom, and I would hoover them up, and I would...
Who are they? Who are they?
What do you mean, who are they?
Well, we know who some of them are.
You do know that once the press gets hold of certain things, they will hoover... This will happen.
Yeah, and
it will take time.
And they should, and that's fine. But the system has to work and be seen to be working. And if the system hasn't worked, which it clearly hasn't in this regard, there are parents, there are victims, there are people who will say, we weren't allowed to talk about this, we were told not to talk about this, we were told even saying that Pakistani Muslims were grooming people, that was racist in itself. Well, it's factual. It is factual.
That's like the argument of when Isla Bryson, that pervert who raped 2 women, put on a pair of tights with a great bulge in his trousers and a wig and said, I need to go to a female jail. And the Scots went, oh, yes, hold on a second, you complete idiots. He raped 2 women. If you rape a child, right? I don't give a damn about the colour of your skin or what your religion is or where you come from. That is morally repugnant.
Yeah, of course it is.
And I find that embarrassing in terms of this country.
And as Maggie Oliver correctly says, it's really straightforward. The police should intervene. The law is there. The law is very clear.
It is.
But the implementation of the law has not been clear. And
I agree. I put to you what I put to many people today already. You look at this country from an outsider's point of view. You've got the Church of England, the recent thing with Justin Wokeby having to resign. You look at the guy that read the 9 o'clock news, whose name I refuse to name now, who got away with it. He and his accomplices who look at the most disgusting things online, get a suspended sentence. You look at grooming gangs that have been covered up. We will be looking at that country, Pete, and we'll be going, that's barbaric. This is the United Kingdom.
And it's
a disgrace.
It is happening here. And the thing is that the law is there, the police are there, but they're not operating in the way that they should, and they haven't done that previously. And that's what an inquiry, if there is one, should look into, and what happens next, and who is held culpable for that as well. But in terms of the actual crimes that are happening, if they're reported, they should be investigated, and if they're not, that's a massive, massive problem, as Maggie Oliver correctly says.
What do you make of this, by the way? 0344 419 1000. Your text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Pete, A&E in crisis as flu cases continue to soar across the UK. I mean, obviously you realise how ill I was. You haven't said anything.
I'm terribly sorry that you're unwell, although a friend of mine did message me and say, maybe if Jeremy stops shouting so much, he might get his voice back.
Right, OK. Shall I whisper? Yeah. It was your fault you took me out on that Thursday night.
It did. Yeah. Larging it.
We were larging it at the House of Commons. That doesn't sound right. Not really. Genuinely, since then, 3 weeks. But, interestingly, a good friend of mine whose daughter is waiting for an operation, even privately, actually, we're reading and hearing stories, are being cancelled because so many of the staff are suffering with this. I mean, the flu was awful.
More than a dozen hospitals.
I will be having a flu jab next year.
Well, more than a dozen hospitals have declared critical incidents. The flu outbreak is worsening. It's putting a lot of pressure on A&E. It's putting a lot of pressure on.
How did you get away with it? Because you've got no immune system at all.
I've got a great immune system.
No, you have not.
I take the those little fizzy orange things. They're called Barocca, but I get the shop's own brand, which I call Barmocca.
Brilliant. Can I just say about Barocca?
Yeah.
It makes your wee-wee luminous.
It does.
It means that you don't have to turn the light on when you go for the early morning piddle when you get to my age at 4 o'clock. And you can start before you get there because you can see exactly where it's going.
Stop.
No, honestly, that's genuinely true. Do you not know that? But don't buy the cheap one. That's no good at all.
What's wrong with the cheap one? It's exactly the same.
No,
it's exactly the same. You don't all of your income.
I beg your pardon?
You don't all of your income.
No, I'm becoming a socialist. I'm spreading it. I'll give you
become a socialist.
I'm going to give you
half your wealth.
Yeah.
That's fine. One and a half of your 3 garages.
Oh, just get married. Just get married and just give them the house before you get married and then you're halfway there. Ryan's doing the let's get... Did you know what Ryan got for Christmas?
What did he get?
I'm genuinely going to put this up a picture. He got a pair of oven gloves.
Brilliant.
And he was excited about that.
Why?
I've no idea. I met his wife. She's quite a
I met her. She's lovely.
She is
nice, actually. Yeah.
Do you think he's punching? I know.
He's massively punching. What's she doing with him?
He's massively punching.
She's very glamorous.
What?
She's very glamorous.
Goodness me. Yeah. You find her attractive?
Oh, she's very glamorous.
He said, I'm going to go to a break before I take you off air. He thinks we're going to say something. Your wife's our favourite person. This is Talk Drive.
Where is the line between opinion and fact? And that's where the whole waters have got muddied. The move comes as Zuckerberg and other tech execs seek to improve relations with the US president to come, Donald Trump. He takes office, of course, in January. Trump and the Republican allies have criticised Meta for its fact-checking policy, calling it censorship of right-wing voices. Well, I think you have to be honest about this and say, yes, there clearly were some censorship of right-wing voices.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 6 minutes to 5 o'clock. Jodie, who's answering the phones, who had a wonderful Christmas and is going away next week to Lapland, a bit late for me, is having boxing lessons. I've just told her my father was a boxer, mother was a bloodhound. I know it's crap. 5 to 5, let's move it now. Listen. Our boss is obsessed with the weather, and frankly, everybody is obsessed with the weather, and quite rightly so, because there's snow everywhere, and now I'm slightly concerned because it could be heading south. We say a very good afternoon to a good old friend of mine. I don't say good old friend. An old friend of mine, Claire Nazir. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jeremy. Lovely to be on your show.
God, you look amazing, woman. You don't age at all. Look at you. What's going on?
Smoke and mirrors, darling.
You're smoking and using a mirror, did you say, no?
Yes, that's good. That's right.
Do me a favour, because I know the weather is so, quite rightly, central to so much about this country, the travel and nobody can get in. And is it coming south today? Because I'm trying to get to Bournemouth tonight. Am I in trouble tonight on the trains?
You possibly could be. There's snow already across the West Country, central southern England. It's pushing eastwards. The Met Office has just issued an amber warning for the West Country, particularly over the high ground, even at low levels. We're seeing snow settle here, and you know we can't cope with snow in this country.
Can't cope with anything in this country,
all over the place, and it's all sort of skirting southern counties. In fact, there could be a little bit of wet snow as far north as, say, Milton Keynes, but all of it is pushing towards home counties, particularly the south, and leaving Essex and Kent probably through the early hours of the morning. A mix of rain and snow along the coastline, you may be okay, but it's cold out there and it's wintry.
It's really interesting, isn't it? We have a lot of chats about, you know, the green climate and carbon-free this and whatever. Are you one of those people that thinks that the weather that we're having is just normal, or are you one of those people that thinks this is because of the way we treat our planet? Where are you on that scale?
Well, I think that we're not seeing as many of these snow events, to be honest, and some people celebrate the snow. Certainly my daughter did yesterday when school was closed. I live up in Cheshire, but my mother was trying to get to Sheffield and couldn't. So there's swings and roundabouts to everything. But in fact, temperatures over the next
Sorry, well, hold on a minute. That's Farnborough. That's not now, is it? Oh, that's an existing, says Ryan. He's done that because my train goes through Farnborough. I'm absolutely stuffed. He's done that deliberately.
There is snow on its way, and Farnborough may see some, Jeremy. You know, it's a watch this space, really. But, you know, the problem is with the snow situation, as I said, things grind to a halt. We don't get these low temperatures very often, so we haven't got the infrastructure to cope with it. But overnight tonight and overnight tomorrow night, we could see temperatures, well, tomorrow night down to -16 in places.
Where?
So that's pretty... Snowfields of northern England and Scotland.
-16, that's proper cold. It was definitely chilly this morning. I should have been wearing my pyjamas this morning. I noticed on the screen it says it's snow joke. And actually, I know we mess around and people say it's good for kids, but you're right about the infrastructure. You're right about how this blights people's chances to get to work, and that has a detrimental effect on the economy. And it causes huge, huge problems on the motorways and the airports and travel, essentially, doesn't it? It causes massive issues.
It really does. And it's the low temperatures as well, which some people can't cope with. But just stepping outside when there's ice can be treacherous for some. I was really worried just about my mum just heading to the station yesterday morning. But it's not going to last. Eventually, the temperature will normalise again. But we do get these blips, and it's part of the nature of being in this country. Wind comes in from lots of different areas of the world. This one is an Arctic blast, bringing with it that sort of frigid air, bringing snow showers to the north and the chance of some snow to the south.
And of course, as people always say, we're an island, so we're going to be absolutely more likely to be hit by everything that's coming from everywhere. So just going forward, a bit of an Arctic blip for the next couple of days, temperatures down to -16. But moving on, is it getting warmer, please?
Eventually, it will get a little bit milder, I say. But in fact, through the weekend, central and eastern areas seeing some sunshine. So Aberdeen down towards Lincolnshire, Midlands, southeast. More cloud, even a little bit of rain and snow towards the west. So we're not out of the woods yet, but high pressure asserting itself next week, Jeremy. Good day to be out and about, maybe cycling to work. I don't know.
Don't be ridiculous. I don't wear lycra. That's ludicrous. Can I just point something out to you? And the irony of the fact that it is freezing cold, and tonight or tomorrow could be -16. The air conditioning has broken in Studio 1 at Talk Towers, and it is about 39 degrees. I am sweating like, honestly, it's like the Niagara Falls. But it's ridiculous, man. I'm sweating like anything. Happy New Year to you and your beautiful family, and thank you so much for coming on. We always love having you on. Claire Nazir, top meteorologist on Talk Drive. Almost 5 o'clock, news on the way, and your calls, please. Delighted to have you on the show today. 0344 499 1000. You can text the show as well, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Chris Harris says, can someone start a petition to make Maggie a dame? Too true, my friend, too true. We will do the news at 5 and more on Talk Drive. The Home of Common Sense is coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hour 2 of Drive on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. We're live across the UK on Wednesday afternoon in the freezing cold. This is Jeremy Carl, getting over man flu and doing quite well. The voice is still holding firm. Thank you to Vocal Zone. Nobody gives me anything for free. Vocal Zone. This is a thing you put in your mouth if you're on the telly or the radio, and it burns the hell out of your mouth and you can't feel your tongue, but apparently it works. If you want to be on the show between now and 7 o'clock, my friends, 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. You can text me 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Let's go to Wigan. Anna, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening to you.
Good evening, Jeremy. Thank you for taking my call.
Always. What would you like to say?
You wouldn't remember because you are not from Leeds, but in 2015 there was a case where one Muslim girl was raped by a white lad. And back then, police didn't know how to do it. They walked door to door and took a DNA sample from every man that was a lookalike of the offender.
Yeah.
And they've managed to identify the guy. In the meantime, he fled the country and went to his home country of Slovakia. And they managed to bring him back, and he was sentenced 20 years. So for some reason, back then, the police didn't know exactly what to do. But when it comes to raping so many women by so many offenders, all of a sudden they don't know what to do and how to catch them and how to prosecute them.
So if people can't hear for the quality of the call, Anna and Wigan, she talks about Zenko Turktak, who was in 2015 dragged into her garden and clubbed 18 times with a rock by a lowlife, left her for dead. The 22-year-old, the person who committed the crime, fled the UK to Slovakia, but was tracked down and extradited by the police and sentenced to 20 years in prison without parole, which is fantastic. And Anna makes a really salient point. If we could do it in 2015, why can we not do it in 2025? I would suspect, Anna, and I thank you for your call, that this is part of the fact that for some reason this obviously goes higher and deeper than anybody politically is prepared to admit. Let's go to Gosport. Spike, you're on Talk Drive. How you doing?
Hey, hiya, Jeremy. Excellent programme as always.
Thanks, mate.
I would just like to say, sadly, I can't see Maggie Oliver getting an award. The reason being is, if the establishment did give her an award, by doing so, they'd be agreeing to what she's been saying and doing.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what's come out of the conversation today. I mean, I've got a Tory MP next, Patrick Spencer, Conservative for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich, and I would love him or any politician to say to me, I find this so abhorrent, I don't understand why this hasn't been dealt with. It can only leave in your mind. In my mind, it leaves one thing, which is this has to go higher and deeper than even the worst thoughts are, because otherwise, morally, it's so repugnant, it would have been sorted out, wouldn't it?
You would have thought so, but it's the way Britain's going nowadays. All the what we'd call recognised establishments and the column of society and support and whatever, it all seems to be going pear-shaped and turning out to be corrupt and self-serving now. Well,
it's interesting, Spike. Listen to Adam on the text. Trump tells the world to do anything to protect America and its people and make it safe and prosperous, and the world thinks he's crazy. How low have we sunk? Spike in Gosport, thank you. Keep the calls coming. 0344 499 1000. You can send a voice note on WhatsApp. You can, of course, send a text, 87222. Start your message with the word talk, as I promised. Next, Patrick Spencer, Conservative for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich, a member of the Education Committee. Patrick, welcome to Talk Drive. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Jeremy.
I didn't get an answer from Matt Vickers, so I'm determined to get one from you. This grooming gang, no, let's be honest, this rape gang debate that has become a rape gang debate, rather than people accepting that this is so abhorrent and patently hasn't been dealt with for years. I'm not blaming you, but I'm going to ask you the question. How the hell in 14 years... Actually, 18 months after the inquiry had given those 20 recommendations, did Richie Sunak's government do absolutely nothing to implement those 20 things? Because the fact of the matter is we're sat here, and I'm not sticking up for Starmer. I'd be the last person. I think he's a disgrace, right? Not to have an inquiry and to tell his MPs how to vote. But it would be fair to say, my friend, your party could have done a lot more whilst in government, couldn't they?
Well, this is the million-dollar question, right? And I just heard your caller from Gosport, and you challenged me before I joined. Why hasn't this been dealt with? As I see it, there are three fundamental problems, of which I think as a society and a culture, we are nervous to approach, but we haven't got on top of our ability to deport nationals who have committed crime. So we have been soft on the perpetrators. I think immigration policy has made this problem worse over time. And like I said before, I think culturally, and it's not a problem just with Whitehall, but across our society and across our public institutions, clearly the culture and fear of being tarnished as a racist continues to pervade.
Right, so let's stop at that point. So would you be honest enough? Would you be honest enough and say that Tories, when in government, are, and I wrote down what you said, nervous to approach that situation, concerned that culturally, I mean, I said it last week on the show, my friend, I said that if 10 years ago or even 5 years ago you talked about immigration and the problems with illegal migrants coming to this country, you would have been labelled a racist. Thank the God, the Lord, we're having that conversation now. Do you think times have changed and people will not accept this whitewash? Because my fear, and I'm genuinely not into conspiracy theories, but you can sit here every day like me and you'd end up thinking this goes much higher and much deeper than even the worst of us would think. Genuinely, I feel that.
Look, we've come a long way from the age of New Labour, where it was considered unacceptable to talk about the risk of extreme levels of migration into this country, and perhaps that's the nature of populations and culture and society, is that we move slower than events. Let me just approach though the criticism that the Tories didn't do enough. Perhaps we didn't do enough while in government, but I believe we did some things. You know, the J Review introduced 20 recommendations, of which we undertook 18 of them. The big one that we didn't undertake was mandatory reporting, in which we consulted on, and 51% of the sector didn't want mandatory reporting. And as a husband of a teacher, I can see some real risks in mandatory reporting, bringing criminal cases against people who have made a mistake but are not guilty of criminal negligence. We introduced a gang task force that literally protected thousands of people and uncovered hundreds of different gangs. Richard Holder, the MP for Badminton Billericay, introduced new rules and laws on licensing of taxis that we know were absolutely critical in the proliferation of this problem. Could we have gone further? Of course, we always could. But I'll tell you what, it's the Conservative Party, first and foremost, willing to have these complicated conversations. And it's the other party, Labour, who are standing in the way of a national inquiry because they don't want to have these awkward conversations.
So why, but then, all right, okay, I'm not, listen, half of the problem, and I accept your answer, Patrick, but half the problem is that we are then going to get to a point where it's us and them. Are you a father?
Yes.
You are?
2 boys, yes.
Okay, so if you had a girl, I've got 4 girls. I have no shame in telling you, and you're an elected member of Parliament, I would go to prison if somebody did that to my daughter. And I think the politicians of all sides need to understand seriously and very quickly that this is not about what Jess Phillips tweeted in 2015 or what the Tories did or didn't do or what this campaign talked about or what we implemented or what Starmer's doing now or why. The fact of the matter is, looking at this country as a place where the Church of England has just been outed as covering up child abuse, right? Where the news at 10, the most famous newsreader on the BBC for years who announced the Queen's death, he and his pedo mates can get suspended sentences and still be in society. And now we've got grooming gangs, actually not going to call them grooming gangs, rape gangs taking the innocence of kids. I think we'd be looking at that society and I think we'd be saying, Patrick, that's pretty bloody barbaric. And I think whatever your political persuasion, we need to get to, I don't care. Somebody's just said to me the King needs to step in and do a royal commission into this because this is not going to go away. That's all I'm saying. I'm not getting on a hobby horse. As a father, I find it so utterly repugnant that I don't give a toss about what your politics is. Morally, this is so disgusting. This country needs to put it right as soon as possible.
I couldn't disagree with any of that. What we need is leadership. We need people brave enough to stick their head above the parapet, bluntly people in elected positions, to say enough is enough. There is a relationship between ethnicity and a subcultural practice of grooming. There is a relationship between immigration and the problem we face. There is a problem with an uber liberal code of silence and fear of asking difficult questions that has allowed this problem to proliferate. This is why we need a national inquiry. This is why we need a national review. We will get to the bottom of it as a country. I believe Britain is a good and decent place made up of good and decent people who are shocked and appalled by what they've read, what they've heard, and what they're listening to. But it will take time. But I would say this government's failure to bring about a national inquiry is a national disgrace. They don't want to do it. And I'll say this again because I think it's really important. Politicians can do the right thing and stand tall. But in this situation, they're not doing it because it forces them into a complicated conversation around ethnicity, cultural practices, that they rely on large numbers of voters in parts of the country where we're going to have to ask these questions. And someone like Jess Phillips, who said some outrageous things during the riots over the last summer, is absolutely culpable for doing this.
And our Ange has gone very quiet. We must say Angela Rayner. Nobody's heard a bleat and squeak from her. Very quickly, because I know you're a busy man. Schools bill is an act of vandalism for the education services, say the Tories. Were you saying to me, Ryan? Oh, I thought Ryan was saying something to me. Sorry, go on.
Yes, the bill that was brought forward by the Labour government today for its second reading, which I've been in the chamber for, is nothing short of an absolute disgrace. The improvement in education in this country over the last 14 years has been a quiet miracle. We have risen through the rankings in maths, in English, in reading, in writing. Children are actually leaving education more able than they have been able to in a generation. The beneficiaries are predominantly disadvantaged children in inner city areas. The irony of this all is that the reforms that were largely introduced, which were largely carried out by the Conservative Michael Gove, were introduced by David Blunkett and Tony Blair. But this government hasn't done the work on education. It hasn't done any of the work looking at the evidence of what's in the best interest of children. They've lent and relied on their union paymasters to come up with ideas, and they've introduced a retrograde, backward-looking dumbing down of our education system as a result. It's a tragedy. A tragedy for children.
What do you make? What do you make then as an overview? This is really interesting because we've never spoken before, right? So, what do you make of an overview of the last 6 months? We've had a man who, won the biggest majority for years on a lower vote than Jeremy Corbyn, who obviously has quite personally decided to attack anything that pensioners are. I mean, he's going to, if you don't freeze them to death, you're now going to cancel the free prescriptions, so they won't be able to keep the medicine or even get the medicine that they need to stay alive. You talk about the way he's treated, I mean, so many, when he gave his union mates 30% pay rises, and veterans are screwed and pensioners are screwed, and so many people seem to be suffering at the hands of this man. What do you make of his first 6 months? Because every day we come in here, you leave this studio with the belief that Keir Starmer is massively out of his depth. And as I said in the run-up to the election, his tent is so large, he invited everybody, didn't he, that he now spends his entire time being attacked from so many different angles and trying to please all the people all the time, and ends up hacking off most of the country all of the time, if I'm honest.
I understand why the Tories lost the last election.
Good.
I understand people's frustration with the Tory party, with our failure to deliver on some pretty key issues, and because there was a loss and a decline in standards of public probity in office. However, to have watched the British public reaction to a new Labour government ride roughshod over some pretty critical things has been nothing short of astounding. And I would leave this conversation with one thing. It really matters who we elect into government. Like I said, I understand why people have had enough of the Tories, and it's for us as a party, me as an MP, as a representative, to get on top of that and to re-engage with our population and our constituents. But it really matters. And for the many people who voted Reform, who allowed Labour to get in, I hope we take it more seriously next time, because Labour, they have crashed the economy.
I have to jump in there and tell you, because I should do. I'm 60 years of age. I was a Tory voter until the last election when I voted for reform. And many people like me are really offended when you say that voting for reform let Labour in. Because this box of sweets could have stood against your government and got elected because the British people, let's be honest, Patrick, had stopped listening to the Tory party. And when I hear people in the Tory party and Labour say that reform is far right, I would respectfully suggest that is your problem, because I was brought up in a Conservative house that believed in stringent, low taxation, balancing the books, strong military, not a fear of crime, but actually a fear of the police, strong borders, etc., etc. A lot of what reform was talking about, and with the greatest respect to the Tories, you weren't talking about that at the last election as loudly as you should have been, and that's why I think so many people went to reform. But you make as big a mistake, the Tory party, by calling that far right, as Starmer does, that anybody disagrees with him. Reform have actually, I think, captured the hearts and the souls of millions of people who are massively dissatisfied with the Tory party, and I think that's really, really relevant for you to take on board.
I take that on board and I accept your point. And like I said, I understand why people were angry with the Conservative Party at the last general election, but I want to talk about the future and about how we get Labour out of government. And we have to be serious that splitting the right is not a good idea. The Conservative Party will go into the next election standing on a platform that will deliver growth, lower taxes, lower regulations, support for the most vulnerable in society, reforming our public services as we did in education. That means
do you think you can get the reform voters back, or do you think there will need to be some sort of joining of the two?
I believe we can. I know a lot of people who voted reform. I know a lot of people in my patch who voted reform, and they gave us a kicking, and we deserved it. And we've heard that, and we've got to learn from it. And we will, and we'll go back, and I promise you, we will be a better party and a better country for it.
Now, good man, listen, it's great to have you on, first time ever. I hope you come back as well. Patrick Spencer MP, Tory MP for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich, 5:20. We're live across the UK. The Voice is well and truly back. We're on until 7 o'clock. If you'd like to be part of this vain attempt at a radio/television programme, 0344 419 1000. Jodie's a bit stroppy today. I just said to her, we're getting a call. Patience is a virtue, you old git, she said. Ryan laughed at me during that segment. I don't quite know why, for a man who got oven gubs for Christmas and is 6'8". You can send him a voice note on 0344 419 1000. And Amy, who pushes the buttons, continues to smile. Is it because of her character or continuing wind problems? I'm back in 3.
Where is the line between opinion and fact? And that's where the whole waters have got muddied. The move comes as Zuckerberg and other tech execs seek to improve relations with the US president to come, Donald Trump. He takes office, of course, in January. Trump and the Republican allies have criticised Meta for its fact-checking policy, calling it censorship of right-wing voices. Well, I think you have to be honest about this and say, yes, there clearly were some censorship of right-wing voices.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 5:23 Wednesday afternoon, we're live across the United Kingdom. This is a little bit sort of bromancy, but I've missed my next guest. I haven't seen him for 3 weeks because, of course, you and I've been ill. Michael Graham. Morning glory.
Jeremy Kyle.
How are you?
I'm very well. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year
officially.
To you.
I mean, even though we've spoken, obviously, but I haven't seen you properly since the Richard Tice party,
where
you apparently infected half of Britain with your lurgy.
Can I have this out? Apparently it's sort of gone viral that I gave it to Isabel Oakeshott.
Apparently so. Apparently, the last time I checked, it was close to 400,000 views on X, on Twitter. You giving it to Isabel Oakeshott.
I don't think I don't think...
She was in bed for weeks afterwards.
She's been in bed, and I gave it to her on the... I thought I gave it to her on the cheek, but I might have given it to her on the lips, so
Possibly.
I don't know what's going on. Can we give a big shout-out? Ben advised me, and Mike occasionally.
Yes.
Right, I mean, we've got to hand it to Ben. Ben is from Hong Kong.
He is.
He says to me, sir, he said, this is a disgrace. This isn't getting in bed. And he brings me, and I didn't know that Mike had had this Chinese remedy, which tastes like a cross between marzipan and dog poo. I'm not even going to lie.
And it's got the consistency of molasses.
Molasses, and you put water in it. Do you put water?
I took it straight.
Well, of course you did, because you're like, you drink bourbon.
He didn't. Yeah, but he didn't tell me to put water in it.
You can put warm water in it.
No, I was like pouring it down my throat.
Yeah, of course you were. And you'd be so good at I'm a celebrity. You'd make the Reverend Richard Coles look like he was useless. Mike could just give me another one. Anyway, unbelievable
it's incredible stuff. I mean, I call it bat juice, right?
But then if you think about before antibiotics, the Chinese had amazing remedies.
Yeah, absolutely
so
right.
There we go. Anyway,
and everybody's been to those Chinese shops in Soho, haven't they? Oh, no, sorry.
What shops?
Yeah, the Chinese remedy...
I've been to a few shops in Soho.
The Chinese herbal remedy shops.
I've been to the sex shops in Soho. I haven't been to the...
Well, these are herbal remedy shops. Where, depending on what remedy you're looking for, they can help you out in all manner of different ways.
Who is your breakfast producer?
My breakfast producer is Christian Mitchell.
Did he get oven gloves for Christmas? Because that's what Ryan got from his wife.
I don't know what he got for Christmas.
No, you don't care,
I don't care. No, I didn't ask him, actually.
No. Did you have a nice Christmas?
I had a lovely Christmas. I know that he went to the Cotswolds for Christmas with his wife because they're expecting their first child in the new year, so they thought it would be nice to get away somewhere where they could just have a nice time.
Because let me tell you this, Christian, the rest of your life, you're absolutely screwed.
I said that to him.
Just being honest.
He's been asking me for parental advice. I'm like, you don't want it from me. I promise you.
Don't ask Mike and I.
Just abandon them as early as possible. Get back to work.
Ashley having the flu and Vic having the flu, there were still these children who wanted looking after you. You have to look after yourselves.
I
don't feel well
so
enough.
they didn't get sick, the kids?
Not at all.
Really?
And the elder kids were amazing. The elder kids did everything. We were like a couple of old people.
I had a sort of a split family situation. My daughter came over from Dubai. We had some lovely time.
I was gutted I was ill because I was going to see her on the Friday.
Yeah, we went out on the Friday night to Piers' party, which was great. And then we went down to Sussex to spend time with my other two kids. And then we went off to this hotel in Brands Hatch, within a stone's throw, believe it or not, of the Brands Hatch racing circuit.
Amazing.
Which was fantastic. And amazingly, we just didn't really do much of anything. We had a spa there. There was a swimming pool, almost empty every morning. I went for a swim every morning. Jacuzzi, a bit of a steam, I
actually hate you.
Yeah.
I tell you a very quick story, which I've actually told before. I was so naive when I first started on television.
Yeah.
We were doing an outside broadcast on day 10 or something.
Yeah.
They said, we're looking for Chester Zoo and it's opposite a spa. And I was looking out for when they went, no, it's a bloody shop, you southern softy. Right, listen, I mean, we can't not talk about the #1 news story, but I want to put to you the way I've been trying to say it to everybody. For me, I'm not interested about the politics. I'm interested in the abhorrence of the morality.
Yes.
there is no doubt in my humble little mind that this has to go higher and deeper than any of us can possibly begin to imagine, because this is being covered up.
Yes, of course it's been covered up. And you know what? I had a barrister on this morning, a very, very well-known barrister who's represented some of the victims, and she said to me, basically, look, we can't have an inquiry. It's a waste of time. And at first I thought that's not the right attitude at all. But what we agreed to say was that actually maybe not an inquiry, but some kind of proper police investigation. It's almost as though we need to hire a kind of Elliot Ness figure, like the guy who went after Al Capone. We need somebody independent who's outside of the police, outside of the jury system, outside of the justice
military
system. Maybe the military, maybe find somebody like, I mean, I would nominate some of the great military guys that we talk to, you know, like Colonel Richard Kemp. Colonel Richard Kemp.
Yeah.
Put him in there and find out why all of this stuff was covered up, who was responsible, drag them before a judge,
I genuinely,
and put them in prison.
Genuinely, without wanting to be accused of conspiracy theories, this could go... I mean, did you hear... Did I tell you the story? I'm sorry, I mean, they go, oh, he's repeating himself again, but the old man did what he did, and there was this debacle on... And there was a scandal on the Royal Yacht Britannia many years ago, and this young sailor was being court-martialed, and he said, you know, if I go down, I'm just telling you this, there'll be a member of the royal family, 2 dukes, 3 MPs, an ex-prime minister, and 3 actors that will come with me. And you do think to yourself, hold on a minute, if this is what it might be... Is that why something so appalling has been covered up? Now, you've got sons, I've got daughters. I would go to prison if somebody did that to my kid.
Of course, absolutely right, no question. And the fact is that it was covered up not just once, not just twice, but continually for more than 25 years. And that's the bit that I can't stomach, you know? And the fact that they're saying, oh, well, it was all in these different, you know, individual little pods, like, you know, there was a pod over here in Rochdale, there was another one over here in Oldham, there was another one in Telford. They were all connected, right? And the reason why it was allowed to happen and continue to happen is because the people in those Pakistani communities are very smart people, and they got involved in local politics and they got involved in local councils. And so the people who were raping our young girls were actually connected to people who were running the town. And that's why the police didn't get involved. They were too scared because there was too much power rested in the hands of the people who had taken over the political aspects
if we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge that Starmer won't have an inquiry. I don't know if it's about being Director of Public Prosecutions or the fear electorally of what will happen, those 5 Muslim MPs who stood up. But what about the Tories for 14 years? What about the moral repugnance, right, of when they got that inquiry, they were still in power for 18 months and did absolutely nothing. I don't understand.
What I think is interesting is that the Tories and the Labour Party both absolutely let down these young women, these children.
Yeah, they did.
But for 2 different reasons. For 2 different reasons. The Labour Party let them down because they didn't want to upset the Asian Pakistani community. The Tories let them down because they didn't care, because they don't care about working class people. And that's genuinely what I think.
I said to somebody earlier, I've said it all afternoon, they get annoyed, my viewers, they say I repeat myself, it's the beginning of the end. If we looked at this happening in any other country with the Church of England and this and rape gangs, and we looked at Hugh Edwards and his paedophile mates, we go, that's barbaric, I don't want to live there. And this is the United Kingdom.
Exactly right.
It's an absolute flipping stain.
And I think this is why Elon Musk has done such a great service to everybody, because he's made me feel ashamed of this country.
That's a great... Do you know what?
Because he has shown, when you see how others see you, Robert Burns wrote a poem about this, if only you could be seeing yourself as others see you, you know, what would that be like? And for people to look at Britain now, as Jordan Peterson has, as Elon Musk has done, to say, what on earth has happened to your country? How have you let this go? How have you let this creation of ghastliness exist for such a long time? And I'm ashamed of it.
Somebody texted me just now and said, isn't it interesting that, you know, Trump stood up and he said, I will do anything to promote the well-being, the prosperity and the safety of Americans and American people in our country, and we all think that's outrageous. Could we not actually do something for... In the same way in this country?
Well, mass deportations is what Trump's going to do. That's what we should be doing, quite frankly. It's that simple. Kick them all out.
My daughter's just texted me. She's just arrived back in Edinburgh University.
I bet it's cold up there.
She says it's bloody freezing.
Yeah.
Do you know, she told me that she doesn't... They put the heating on 4 hours a day because of cost.
Where?
In Edinburgh.
Really?
She said you need to give me more money. No, she didn't actually. She's a good girl.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about that. Let's talk about some other, which is right up your street. Defence companies have stopped attending university careers fairs and events because of security fears over protesters, because students are saying, oh, you're horrible people with guns, you're violent, you're disgusting, we don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'm rather pleased that they're not doing it anymore, because I don't want them recruiting people from our universities, because can you imagine having one of these guys in charge of a missile firer and we go,
really.
would you mind firing that missile over there? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm feeling
sitting
a bit anxious.
cross-legged.
I'm feeling a bit anxious, I'm not sure. Can you come into work today to fire the missile? No, I was having a duvet day today. Can you imagine these people, defence of the realm, and you're relying on them to actually make sure that we don't get invaded? I mean, they'd all be asleep.
I'm always fascinated about the whole university thing, because there was that terrible story that you broke yesterday about the jazz teacher for 50 years, Martin Speake, who taught jazz to a variety of students of all ages and cultures and creeds and religion. And they've all turned on him because he happened to answer an email from his boss saying there isn't actual racial inequality inside the sax department at Trinity College.
He actually said that, you know, if you happen to be a black musician, you've got more chance of getting work, because almost every festival that he now goes and plays at, they say if you've got a band, you need to have at least one black musician in it. They don't say you need to have at least one white musician in it. You don't get Bob Marley and the Wailers getting a call saying, excuse me, you haven't got enough white musicians in your group.
Where do you... I know we spend our lives, it seems, moaning, and I don't want to spend my life moaning. But where do you genuinely... You talk about the embarrassment with the grooming gangs. You talk about the police who... You know, we've got a Prime Minister who says you're far right if you dare to disagree with him. It's almost as if the next generation are as woke as anything. Where does it end, Mike? We're in our 60s and it's frustrating to hell.
But the good news is that the younger generation... My youngest is turning 18 in about a few days' time. He's pretty right-wing, and so are all of his mates, and they love talk and they listen to it. Lots of them have joined Reform, and they're going to vote Reform because they've had enough of the wokists. They've had enough of the women in schools telling them that they're toxic and that they shouldn't be talking to girls because, you know, it might be upsetting for them. And, you know, they've had enough.
Upsetting for them?
And they're like, well,
I've got our Henry. He's not yet. He's 16 in about
exactly,
7 weeks.
He's
16.
He's not joining the Socialist Alliance anytime soon, is he?
No. Henry is absolutely with your young lad and you and me. But it's interesting. But then the girls and other kids of mine who are at university, that is a big thing at university. You can't say this and worried about if you think that and all that.
With Donald Trump coming into power, it's going to change. I mean,
look at what Zuckerberg's done.
I was just going to say. I mean, Zuckerberg now has done a complete volte-face and now thinks it's a bad idea to censor anybody's posts on Facebook. Oh, really? Well, why didn't you think that in the first place? Why were you suddenly, you know, doing that 4 years ago? Now you're not going to do it because Trump is already affecting the future of this world, and I think it's brilliant.
Let's talk about Trump, if we can. Extraordinary speech yesterday, which was, I mean, I want Greenland. I want the Panama Canal. I want the Gulf of Mexico to be renamed the Gulf of the United States. I think Canada could be the 51st state. While I'm at it, all of you miserable buggers... Yes?
He said if they haven't released the hostages by the time he's in power... All hell will break loose.
And all you buggers in Europe that I'm defending, you give 2% of your GDP for defence. If you don't give 5, I'm off.
And I think the thing I like about Trump now is that he's got more whys over the course of the last 4 years. You can tell that he's much better at it. Also, the people who are up against him are going to be much less critical of him because they now know that he knows what he's doing. I think the first time around they were willing to pick on him and say, you know, let's destabilise Trump, let's not trust him, let's make out he's crazy. But he isn't. And he's come back into power. Only the second president in the history of the United States of America to have done what he's done.
And they would be very, very stupid because this man won the popular vote, which hasn't been done for years. Did you see? You've just done Plank of the Week. You can't tell me who won, but if I'd been doing the show today,
you won't be surprised when I tell you.
I wanted it to be Kamala Harris because the look on her stupid face as she had to stand there for half an hour. Did you see her saying reading out? Yes, he won.
Here's the result.
Absolutely fantastic.
We did nominate Joe Biden because I thought it might be the last time we get to do it. Because next time, and I don't know if you're going to be able to do Plank of the Week next week.
Absolutely.
But that will be the very last week that Joe Biden will be, because I don't know if you saw the video this week of him singing Happy Birthday to somebody whose name he couldn't remember. And instead of kind of mumbling it as if it sounded like a name, he just went, Happy birthday, dear. This man's running the free world.
I do think
for another 10 days.
I do think I read something over the weekend that says that he genuinely believes that he would have beaten Trump, but I do believe there's been a slight...
Well, he also genuinely believes that he can walk on Earth.
Well, no, but I actually genuinely believe there's a bit of a spring in his slightly dodgy step, because I think he's absolutely delighted that Kamala Harris got slaughtered.
Yes.
I think he can then go down in history or down in... And just say, I beat him. She didn't. You got rid of me. You don't know what I would have done.
Of course,
it was a nightmare.
He's now going to go down as one of the failed politicians in America because he didn't get a second term. You know, because most popular presidents at least get a second term. He didn't get one.
So Donald Trump's going to be a very, very interesting time,
Fantastic.
isn't it? Do you think we'll get a national inquiry then into this grooming row?
I think eventually they're going to have to fold on this, because if Keir Starmer doesn't, if they don't come up with a... You know, I've actually given him a way out, because I've said, let's do it as a police inquiry. All right, don't have a second inquiry. Don't just make it into something that becomes something that everybody forgets about. It goes on for years. You know, but appoint somebody to investigate what happened.
Somebody from outside.
I think if he doesn't do that, he's toast. Because people will get so sick of him, and his own party will get so sick of him
already, mate.
That they'll say this man has lost the trust of the British public. He doesn't deserve to be Prime Minister of this country.
Did he ever have the trust of the British public?
I think he did have it at the beginning, but he's lost it over time because of all the mistakes that he's made and all the terrible decisions that he's made and all of the dreadful things that he said. Like you say, calling us all far right because we disagree with him.
But you can't do that. You can't say. So I have something. I'm going to ITV tomorrow. I've said it on the show, and you're coming, aren't you? And I've got some guests coming.
Not forever, by the way.
And can I?
We're
just going for the day. Yeah. But can I just say the most interesting thing of all? Well, maybe the most interesting thing of all is that every single one of my guests from Newcastle, they're coming from all over the country. They're all excited about one thing and one thing only. And do you know what that is?
No.
I'm meeting Mike Graham. Mike Graham's going to be there. Mike Graham's going to be at lunch. They're genuine. All the Toon Army are so excited.
Excited, brilliant.
Good man. Listen, thank you.
Well, I can't wait. It's going to be great tomorrow.
You've had a long, long day. Breakfast in the morning. What you got for us?
No idea.
That's what I love about the man.
Okay, we came in this morning, right? Yeah. There was a massive fire in Beverly Hills and in Pacific Palisades. Incredible footage of which you've never seen.
LA's. I mean, before the fires, has been shot to pieces. This town is over, isn't it?
Well, there's terrible problems there, terrible homeless
social problems.
But California's still, for me, a beautiful part of the world. You know, you've been there many times, as I have. You know, you go down to Laguna Beach, you go down to Orange County. You know, it's fantastic. You go into the desert where Palm Springs is, beautiful. You know, it will recover, because it will. But I mean,
lots of homeless people, lots of drugs,
loads of homeless people, lots of drugs. They legalised cannabis and it hasn't worked. No. You know, the cars and the traffic is horrendous. But there's something about California that there will always be. You know what I mean?
Trump will probably have a go. He'll probably get that all sorted.
He might actually
just get a couple of dumpsters.
Because, funny enough, my son lives there. One of my kids lives there in Long Beach, and he started off being a bit woke, but he's now turned completely.
Good.
Because the Californian sort of, Democrats, Kamala Harris and that bloke Newsom, who's the governor, Gavin Newsom, they've ruined it. They've completely ruined the place.
I mean, let's just not forget before we go. I know, Ryan, you're in a hurry. She stood with the man Tim Waltz, who had who'd actually put in male toilets, men's what's it called?
Tampon machine.
That's exactly. I was going to say menstruation.
Tampon Tim, they used to call him.
I mean, honest to God, man, no wonder Trump won. 20-6. Thank you so much indeed. And we're going to have in the next couple of weeks we're going to make a little bit of an announcement, Michael and I. You didn't even know I was going to say that, did you?
I didn't know that. No.
20 minutes to 6. You're on Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You just heard him and you can hear him tomorrow morning. The only way to wake up. Morning Glory here on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. And he is the main man that drives this station forward, the station that allows you to have your say, who allows you to just think in your own mind about what is happening in the news without fear of retribution or favour. We're not here to offend. We're here to give you a platform on which you can think freely and clearly. It's the home of free speech and common sense. It's Talk, and Mike's back tomorrow morning from 6. This is Drive, 18 minutes to 6, sport on the way. To the phone lines for a couple of minutes. We'll go to Lancashire. John, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Jeremy. I'd like to talk to you about my daughter. Back in 2004, my daughter was gang raped. Pakistani Muslims from Oldham. They travelled 18 miles to my town to get to my daughter. When I found out, I phoned the police up. Now, this had been going on for a few weeks and I didn't know, because I used to work 100 hours a week to pay for my kids to go to private school. And when I found out, I phoned the police up. Police constable come, 2 of them, basically told them what has been going on. Told me to let it go, otherwise I will get arrested for being racist. She could pick any boyfriend she wanted. She was 13-year-old and he was 20.
I don't know what to say to you. I mean, first of all, thank you. Thank you for on the show. You're telling me the police genuinely said to you, let it go?
Let it go.
Your 13-year-old daughter is being groomed by a 20-year-old who's travelled 18 miles to your hometown. You're phoning me now live from Lancashire. Your daughter was raped by a Muslim man. You know this for a fact. She admitted that. You went to the police and nothing has ever happened.
Nothing happened. The only thing that happened is that 4 cars and a van came up from Oldham to look for me, to do me. And I had a friend who phoned, because I was at work at the time, phoned me up and said, John, don't come into town. He said, there's a huge gang of Muslims looking for you. He said, don't come into town. He said, we can tackle this afterwards. So obviously there was no point phoning the police up again, because so I did what any dad would do.
Let's not talk about that, because I don't want to talk about that, because I don't want to say anything that will get you into trouble. Let me ask you, if you're okay with this, a couple of questions. Are you racist?
No.
I
have Muslim friends.
What do they say about this abhorrence?
Oh, well, I have one chap, I won't mention his name, and he's turned around to me and said, I'm so sorry, John. He said, there's a lot of us. He said, all right, we know what's been going on. He said, it's all down, he put it all down to the clerics and whatever, that they're going down to the mosques.
But your friend and people like him, and I'm not having a go at your friend, they need to be vocal. I've been saying this for weeks. The police, this is why I agree with Mike Graham wholeheartedly. There needs to be maybe not a national inquiry, and if there is going to be one, it doesn't need to be the police, because they can't mark their own homework. There's too many problems with the police, and I believe, and yours is a personal story, Johnny, but I've been saying all afternoon that I believe this goes higher and deeper than any of us can possibly imagine. Can we talk about something that we don't talk about, which is the victims? How is your daughter? How old is she now?
She's 30. Well, I think she's about 30 now. But she's got a lovely husband. I've got lovely grandkids. And this, we buried it from day one, but it lives with me every day.
But it lives with you, and I understand that as a father. What about her?
Oh, she still has the memories, you know, but she's had to move on.
But as a father, I suppose the first emotion as a father, and I mean this in the right way, you let me get the sentence out, you want to protect your kids, and when you're not able to, not through your own fault in any which way at all, it lives with you forever, right?
Exactly.
What do you want? What do you want to see happen as this becomes quite rightly a national scandal? What do you want to see happen, buddy?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see every MP to be grilled by the SAS, because they've known all along what's been going on, and they've buried it.
It's utterly disgusting. It's a stain on us as a country, mate. I'm so grateful that you felt able to share your story, and I'm glad, in part, that your daughter has been able to move on. I'm sorry for you as well, because there will be people, but you know, a lot of people will say the first question to you was, "You racist?" Because a lot of people, Johnny, will say, you're just saying this because you're just making... No, we're not. This is a fact. And whether it's because of illegal migration or certain religions, cults, creeds having a different view, I don't give a damn. Morally, I keep saying this, it is disgusting, it is repugnant, it is a stain, it is a disgrace. And these people, I don't care whether it's... I don't care who it is. They need to be rounded up and put in prison. John, I really, really, really appreciate you phoning the show. My love to your family. Thank you so much indeed. That was John in Lancashire. This is Talk Drive.
I've got a feeling that Labour will eventually allow this inquiry, and I think they'd be well served to accept it today, because the public are now on side with an inquiry without any doubt at all. I mean, I have to say, from my point of view, there is a stink in the air about this whole issue of grooming gangs. What were the authorities doing? What were they not doing? Was there some sort of blanket put over the whole issue of this being predominantly around men of Pakistani heritage?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
What is it, 8 or 9 minutes to 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 8th of January, and I'm delighted to ask Amy to push the button.
Sport Summary. on tour.
And I'm delighted to welcome Stan Ellard to Studio One to celebrate the news that that piece of crap has gone from West Ham. I'm sorry, it's true.
No, have a little bit of respect.
He's going to dump that. None.
He should dump that. Have a little bit of respect and decorum.
Julian Lopetegui was never going to be a success, OK? Fact. I've said it, OK? This a bizarre, let's spend 100 million and get rid of David Moyes with Pellegrini. Didn't work. Bring Moyes back. Julian Lopetegui lasted a week at Wolves and 2 weeks at Spain, right? Rubbish. Bring on Graham Potter. So happy.
I'm sure you've all know by Jeremy's excitement in his face that we had the news confirmed a few hours ago that Julian Lopetegui has been sacked as West Ham manager. One thing I would say, look, losing it, you're 14th in the table, you've lost 9 from 20 games, it has been a mess this season. The way it's been handled has been disappointing. Yeah, the fact that he had to take training this morning, when it's been well documented for the best part of 3 days that he's being sacked, Potter's being lined up, there's pictures doing the rounds of Potter and Steinem meeting out. So I think the whole thing's been a bit...
The picture of Potter and Steinem was from 6 months ago, by the way, so you're aware.
But, I know that, but... It's been more documented.
Why would he take training, though, with respect? Is that to fulfill his contractual obligations?
Sack him, it was his job, right? If you haven't been sacked here, if you think you're being sacked tomorrow, you've got to come in and do a show. No, you're not being sacked, obviously. Although I should say Alex Phillips. I can't wait for my sports update with Alex Phillips tomorrow. She's very, very good. But, Jeremy...
Sorry, could I just point out that Alex Phillips doesn't do drive time anymore? Peter Caldwell's on it tomorrow.
Oh, really?
I know. So you're not doing sport,
I'm not doing tomorrow. I would say, I think Peter Caldwell... No, I think Graham Potter's a really, really good appointment for West Ham.
As long as they give him time.
So we understand that he's going to be given a 2.5-year contract, but with a break clause after 6 months where they could part ways if it doesn't work out that well. I think that's quite weird as well. That you're basically almost kind of saying we're not really sure it's going to work out, so we'll reassess everything after 6 months. I think Graham Potter is a really, really good coach. I think he'll play a better style of football than what Julian Lopetegui did. And I think the Chelsea thing didn't work out, but it was a basket case of a club where every manager at that time was pretty much failing. The work he did at Brighton, though, was really, really good work. I think he's a good coach. I think he improves players. I actually think it's a good move for you guys and also for him. It feels like I
think he's going to struggle. Bowen's out for several months, which is an issue. I think that the people that they bought... I mean, I was not a Zuma fan in the end, but Klinsmann, what's his name? What's he called?
He's definitely not.
Max Kilman. Awful.
Only £40 million he costs as well.
Absolutely dreadful, right? And this obsession with Lopetegui not to play Tom, whatever his name is. I don't care. The useless ex-manager wouldn't play Souček. It'll be interesting to see. I think Graham Potter will get the team on side. I think they'll come out and play well.
On paper, you've got some talented players in that team, especially the attacking line, right? I know Bowen's injured, but Bowen... If you can get Paqueta back to his best, we know Kudus is a baller.
Before he gets banned for life,
if you stop saying that, if you can get full Krug score,
he should go as well. He's rubbish.
If you look at the team,
the German can go as well.
There's lots of good players in that team, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Certainly on paper, you should be a lot higher than 14th. So I think I'm intrigued to see how
I think if he gets them in the top 10, it'll be absolutely fantastic. And he's only got to win. If you're probably looking at it and going, there's about 6 points difference between where they are and the Champions League.
But you're not even a West Ham fan, though, are you?
Yes, I am.
You're a Newcastle fan.
No, Newcastle.
What a win for Newcastle. Should we do Newcastle last night?
Can I just bring this up, right? EFL semi-final last night, Newcastle against Arsenal. What was your quote?
I can't remember.
1-0 to Arsenal.
Okay.
Newcastle, I said, would win, and they did. And then I read the most outrageous thing, and I haven't even said this to Ryan. Mikel Arteta, in the post-match press conference, said... The ball in the League Cup is different than the Premier League, which is why we didn't score. He said that.
Do we call this clutching at straws when you're blaming the ball?
Clutching at weird balls, I would call it.
I watched the game last night, Jez. I thought Newcastle were excellent.
They've been excellent the last few weeks. Because they were in trouble 6 weeks ago.
And then 6 weeks later, they've won 7 games in a row. They're into the Carabao Cup semi-final with 1 foot in the final. They're 5th in the Premier League table, 1 point behind Chelsea, who people a few weeks ago were saying in the title race. They've got a centre-forward, Isak, who's scoring goals for fun. They've got Anthony Gordon, who's been unbelievable left side. Sandro Tonali in midfield. We're finally, we obviously missed a lot of football because of the betting ban. He is just dictating play in the middle of the park.
And I have to say, and you'll all laugh when I say this because I am a Newcastle. I am a fan to a degree.
You can't support 2 teams.
Joe Linton will never get the credit that he deserves.
I think
fantastic.
At the moment he is.
But you know who's been unbelievable? Bearing in mind that Botman has been injured. Yeah. Bearing in mind that Fabian Schär is now...
Burn.
Dan Burn, who cost £7 million, is 6'10" or something, taller than Ryan. has been
How tall is
awesome. 8'7".
Is
Has
he
been
actually?
awesome. Dan Burn, awesome.
You know what? I looked
for
at
£8 million.
One thing I think is a great thing about this new club, they all just function well. You can all just tell they're well drilled, well organised. And Eddie Howe, he's so tactically astute. First off, played on the counter-attack, enjoyed lots of success. Then second half, he had no shame in basically going for a 5-5, 11 behind the ball. They get the 2-0 win. Arsenal, I know
There's no way they'll score 3 goals at St James's Park on the Toon Army.
Arsenal just don't look right at the moment. It all feels a bit of a struggle for Arsenal.
Shall I tell you what I think about Arsenal? I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, and the shape and the movement. I just don't think there's a cutting edge.
But you know what, Jez? I'd even go and think, I don't think this season is beautiful. I think last season before that, they cut teams apart.
Yeah.
It all just feels like it's hard work. You know,
I think it's really weird what I'm going to say. It's almost over-intricate. I'm not into one-route football, but sometimes you can become so...
Well, sometimes, like Newcastle do, launch along to Isak and say, you run in behind, you've got that pace. But...
Rob Edwards, the worst-looking manager in the Football League, has been sacked by Luton.
Yeah, so they're just above the relegation zone, and this has been a real surprise for me because he did such a good job in taking them up. And then last season, I thought Luton were a team that played a lot better than I'd watched Luton play lots of games last season where they'd be winning 2-1 with 10 minutes to go, playing really well, and they'd always find ways not to win. And I kind of thought they kept most of their players from last season to this season, but Jez, I can't say I've watched lots of Luton this season, I haven't, but they are just losing,
which is a real shame because Rob Edwards is a good guy and he just got a 4-year contract. That hasn't been officially confirmed yet.
So yeah, a real shame because I think he's one of the most likeable guys. As you mentioned, they're very, very handsome. Not that that's relevant, but they're fighting relegation.
He's not really handsome, is he?
Well, do you think you're handsome?
I know I'm handsome.
That's outrageous.
Jodie, am I handsome?
You're nearly 60, Jeremy.
Am I? Absolutely. Am I more handsome than Sam Ellard, Jodie?
Well, no, obviously not.
Absolutely.
You're 60. When are you 60?
July the 7th.
You think you sound better?
I'm having a big party. You going to come?
Will I be invited to it?
You will be invited.
Promise you'll be invited to it?
I promise you.
Who's the most famous person who'll be at the party?
I don't know.
Simon Cowell?
I don't know yet.
You don't know Simon Cowell?
I don't know.
Simon Cowell won't be there.
Who will be the most famous person? I don't know. It's not about
Mike
famous people.
He'll be there, won't he?
Mikey will be there, won't he?
Spurs-Liverpool, by the way, tonight.
Yes, how do you see that one going?
13-7 Liverpool.
No, I'm thinking 14-9.
Okay.
Watford are in free fall. We should laugh at Ryan for a bit.
Ryan just said to me, he thinks Tom Cleverley's going to be sacked.
You don't think that, right, do you?
Yeah, honestly, he said get Cleverley out.
Honestly, you genuinely think he'll be sacked?
He's doing the hashtag get Cleverley out. No, I'm joking.
He's honestly...
They're still there or thereabouts, aren't they?
Those Watford fans, they don't know how lucky they are.
What did you say before I came on air, by the way?
What did I say?
About me?
I said you look like Christmas has been good to you.
Christmas was very good to me, thank you very much. My Hanukkah was wonderful, thank you for
Good, I hope you enjoyed it. What was your best present? Got a girlfriend yet?
No.
No. Of course you haven't, you sad kid. Listen, thank you very much indeed, Sam Ellard. Tonight, he says that Liverpool will beat Spurs in the League Cup 14-9. That'll be good. 0344 499 1000 is our telephone number if you'd like to be part of this vain attempt at a radio programme. An hour of drive time to go. You can text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. We have the news at 6. It's next, my friend.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Hour 3 of Drive for Wednesday. The Voice is surviving. I'm slightly worried. Richard Tice is on the way. He's going to tell me off for giving Isabel the lurgy. 0344 499 1000 is our telephone number. You can text me 8722. Start your message with the word talk. The most emotional call probably ever on this show just then from Rob in Lancashire. In Lincolnshire, Rob says, I've just listened to John from Lancashire. I'm absolutely engaged that such a thing, an outrage, could happen in this country. I have a daughter and given the same situation would not be responsible for my actions. Labour MPs should be truly ashamed of themselves. Disgraceful. I'll go further, Rob in Lincolnshire. I think that anybody who has been associated in Parliament, the police, social services, local council, anywhere in the last 25 years should be ashamed of themselves. If you're just tuning in, we had a call from a father half an hour ago whose daughter, at the age of 13, was groomed by Muslim men. They drove 18 miles from Oldham 20 years ago. He was so appalled, he went to the police who said, we can do nothing, we'll be known as racist. He was then warned off by a Muslim group. It has lived with him. His daughter, thankfully, has moved on with her life and is married and has kids. But he, as a father, has never been able to get over the fact that, and I get this, that he feels that he let his kid down, which of course he didn't. I've said until I'm blue in the face in this on this show today that we are at a crossroads here. This isn't about Keir Starmer only. Yes, he said no to an inquiry, which I think is absolutely outrageous. I think it is fundamentally wrong. He's talking about it being a right-wing bandwagon. This is a moral... It is disgusting and repugnant, and whether this is the highest to the lowest, these people need to be lined up and seriously dealt with. Richard Tice in a tick. First up, Michael in Birmingham. 2 minutes, you're on Talk Drive. What you got, Mikey?
Yeah, look, this grooming gang stuff, the root of it all goes into like this diversity, inclusion, paralysing anybody doing anything. I'm in the public sector. Where I am now, high-profile case before Christmas. Instead of sackcloth and ashes, next week there's an unconscious bias course, which will be basically telling me how racist I am and what a misogynist I am. And you know, instead of looking into the systemic failures brought about by being paralysed by DEI, diversity and equality, that they will go down that rabbit hole. What they should do, what reform needs to do, is say that they will scrap every diversity and equality unit in every public sector across the country, because they're so self-serving. They're bound to find racism, aren't they? That's what their job is. That if they don't find it, they haven't got a job.
Could not agree with you more, Michael, and you'll love this. Turn up your radio, because next you can respond to that straight away. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Jeremy. I can confirm to your previous caller that absolutely that is part of our plans. We've said it repeatedly, that we will get rid of every diversity, equality and inclusion officer in department and heaven knows what. It's ludicrous. It's holding this great country back. It's costing us a fortune. It's a disaster.
Rich, first of all, I'd like to apologise for giving Isabel and indirectly you the lurgy over Christmas. Is that right? Because it's got 500,000 hits on X, apparently.
Yes, well, we'll be having words afterwards, Jeremy. Let's put it like that.
You sound very like you're telling me off, Deputy Leader. What are you doing? I'm going to... so much for the whip. On a serious note, my friend, I want to do this differently than other people have, because I've been doing this all day. I'm not interested that he's banning his MPs for voting for an inquiry for a minute. I'm not interested that he could be because of the department when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, or Kemi Badenoch saying we should do it, or Robert Jenrick. I'm not. What I would love to ask you, because you've always been to us a politician who says what he feels, speaks the truth, and is not scared of who might disagree with him. You are a father, I am a father. I am frankly able and willing to say that I would do prison time if somebody did that to one of my daughters. I believe that as every day goes by, Richard, and we hear more about who tweeted what or who blamed who, the one thing people need to understand is that, and this isn't conspiracy, people are going to think that this decades-long cover-up must go to the very highest in this country and must go far deeper than any of us can possibly imagine, because it is an absolute stain on the United Kingdom, a country that you know, I've always been proud to be part of. But when you look back now and you think, right, so the Archbishop of Canterbury had to resign recently for the Church of England covering up paedophilia. If the biggest newscaster in this country and his pedo mates can get away with being imprisoned whilst looking at vile images of children, we now discover, and let's not call them grooming gangs, they're rape gangs, have been prevalent in our society for 20 years. And whether it's social workers, police, local politicians, major politicians, prime ministers, I don't know, right? I don't even want to say the next thing that I want to say, right? It is an absolute... We would look at that and we would say that is a barbaric country. What the hell has happened, Richard Tice, to the United Kingdom I grew up being proud of? It's awful.
Well, I'm afraid to say, Jeremy, the first thing is that I fear that some of this horrific activity is still going on. Yeah. What we don't know is where. And it has been going on for decades, and there has been a gutless cowardice because of, all to do with DEI, actually. You know, we had multiculturalism forced down our throats, and anybody who wanted to question it was automatically smeared and labelled and cancelled as a racist bigot. And so these are the direct consequences of that. That thirst and hunger by Tony Blair's lot for multiculturalism has directly led to this appalling catastrophe. But I stood up in the chamber today and I said that, sure, the victims and survivors want action now on the recommendations and what we know, but also in many towns up and down the country, most of them, I think, Labour-led in terms of who's leading the council, there are victims and survivors who've not yet got answers. And that's why we need a national, dedicated, specific child rape and grooming gang inquiry to ask the difficult questions, to compel people to come and answer those questions. The problem with a local inquiry is that you haven't got that degree of compulsion. And I'm hearing from a number of people that there have been whitewashes, there have been cover-ups, there have been witnesses who basically have been silenced.
Did you hear my last call? Did you hear my last caller?
I heard, yes, various callers.
I mean, I mean, the guy from Lancashire, his daughter, groomed in Oldham.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
So she's 13, 20 years ago. He doesn't know he's working all round the clock to pay for his kids to go to private school. He's a good man. You can hear it in his voice 20 years later. A group of Muslim men grooming her from Oldham. It comes out. They've raped her. He goes to the police. I mean, this is an honest man. And we'll play the call. It's going to go viral. He said they told him, we can't do anything about it. It'll be seen as racist. Now, actually, we're going to play a clip to you, Richard Tice. As the leader of Reform, have a listen, as the deputy leader, have a listen to this. Play it now, please.
My daughter was gang raped. Pakistani Muslims from Oldham. They travelled 18 miles to my town to get to my daughter. When I found out, I phoned the police up. Now, this had been going on for a few weeks and I didn't know, because I used to work 100 hours a week to pay for my kids to go to private school. And when I found out, I phoned the police up. Police constable come, 2 of them, basically told them what has been going on, told me to let it go, otherwise I will get arrested for being racist.
Richard Tice.
I mean, you know, we just weep listening to it, but in all seriousness, what I want to know is whether that father, whether he has, you know, in a sense, what's happened? Has he been able to speak to any of these inquiries? Has his complaint been properly dealt with? And if the answer to that is no, then I regret to say that proves my very point, and it proves the concern of tens of millions of British people. And there is no excuse whatsoever. And all these people who are saying, well, we've had inquiries, we know what needs to be done. I'm sorry, we don't. And
well, the inquiry, to be fair, that was had. Let's be perfectly honest. Only one victim was allowed to speak at it. This should be about the victim, shouldn't it?
There is a great deal of deliberate misinformation about this and misleading. The Professor J inquiry that came out 2 years ago was an overarching inquiry. grooming gangs and Rotherham was only mentioned once. Okay, so we haven't got the answers. We don't know which towns this is still happening in, and we should be able, in this country of ours that we think is great, we should be able to do two things at once. Yes, carry out the urgent actions required to stop this vile activity and to bring to justice those who've committed heinous crimes. But secondly, in parallel, we need to run an ongoing inquiry in all these different towns to find out the absolute truth.
Right, let me ask you this, because I'm very interested to hear a politician always being as upfront as you are. You said national inquiry. You talked then about individual towns. One of the suggestions earlier was from several callers, which I think is really, really important. And you, as somebody who was appalled, as Nigel was, as many of us were, about what happened at Manchester Airport and how long it took for the Director of Public Prosecutions to charge those two Muslim men who had attacked the police officers, who were suspended quite rightly before I get accused of things, but there was no balance. One of the things that one caller said to me earlier, which I think is really relevant here, is the police are crap at marking their own homework. This needs to be somebody almost outside our country, or outside the remit of police, social...
Everybody is bad at marking their own homework.
Well, it needs to be somebody outside, shouldn't it?
So, of course, it needs to be genuinely independent.
Yeah.
And there are real concerns about that. But here's the thing. We have said that if the government won't hold an independent inquiry, we, Reform UK, rather like we did with the thugs in Manchester Airport, we forced the CPS finally to charge those two individuals. I want to call them thugs, but someone will probably tell me off. But anyway,
I'll call them
those
thugs.
two individuals.
Tell me off then, whatever.
But so we've done that, and if the government won't hold this inquiry, then we at Reform UK, we will organise it, we will sort it. We'll give the government probably until the end of January to get their act together. And I think that I think actually I sense that the government is beginning to move.
Well, Jess Phillips today said, didn't she? She said, we won't rule out a new national inquiry if enough victims seem to want it. That's what she said this afternoon.
Well, and I think the Prime Minister was a great deal more measured about this issue in Prime Minister's questions today than when he gave that ridiculous speech accusing anybody who wanted a national inquiry as basically being part of the far right. I think he's realised, someone's told him, had a word in his shell-like ear, that they're completely out of step with the public mood. So expect in the next few days a shift in the government's position. And if they don't shift, we're going to shift it for them, because Reform UK will organise and hold our own independent inquiry. We know we can raise the money. We know we can sort it. It can happen in a prompt, rapid time frame. I said in the chamber today, we should be able to organise this with enough people, enough things going on in parallel in different towns. We could sort this in a year.
How did that go? How did that go down in the chamber? Do they just think you're a bunch of stirrers? Do they? What was their response?
No, I think in fairness, people gave me the courtesy of listening, and they know that I'm a man of action and have got a track record of getting things done. So let's see.
Have any Labour MPs spoken to you about their frustration at being told how they're to vote, and that they, privately, of course, you couldn't give away that information, that they would welcome an inquiry and go against what Keir Starmer thinks?
I've not specifically had that, but what I do know is that they will be getting emails in their inbox from their constituents as we speak, and over the course of the next few days, saying, what on earth are you playing at? Particularly when at 7 o'clock tonight, they go through the no lobby and vote against the reasoned amendment by the opposition to have this inquiry. And I think that will be a stain on their individual characters and voting records. It's a 3-line whip, I understand, from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, it is.
So that's going to be there, indelibly marked on their characters for forever.
And that's a really important point, because I'm writing a book, and whilst researching the book, it's absolutely true that it's on public record how your MP votes. I'm not going into why I know that, but it will forever be there. Can I put something to you as well? Keir Starmer is quite possibly the least popular Prime Minister we've ever had, and we had Liz Truss, which has got to be pretty bad. And you keep thinking, if you're me, there's got to be a moment when you listen to the right people or do something that garners a little bit of an uplift. Surely this was his moment to say, yes, I believe there should be an inquiry. By saying no, everybody's picking up on being when he was in charge of prosecutions, the Director of Public Prosecutions, has he got something to hide? Is he part of this entire establishment? Yeah. But no, I was just going to say, the bigger issue surely for Keir Starmer is that he lost 5 seats in the last election to Muslim independent candidates who stood up and purely talked about Gaza. And is he frightened that he'll lose his majority of seats north of Watford Gap if he dares to stand up and address an issue that, as you rightly say in Reform, affects millions of people in this country? That's what I think.
I think they are terrified of losing seats to an element, not all, let's be very clear, an element of the Muslim vote. And there's another thing that happened in Prime Minister's questions today, which is related to Keir Starmer and what I think was a woeful performance as Director of Public Prosecutions, because a Conservative MP stood up and said to him, why did he do nothing when the case of Mohammed al-Fayed and the allegations against him came up? Lots of people knew about it when he was DPP. And extraordinarily, he said, it never came across my desk. So he's very happy when something doesn't suit to say that not on my watch, Gov, didn't come across my desk.
Do you remember, and I know he's not your favourite person at all, but do you remember when Boris Johnson, who quite rightly got slated for Partygate, who probably lost the premiership of this country when the Queen was sat on her own and he was apparently having a party, whether he was at it or not. But I remember him quite rightly standing up and saying, it's a bit rich, Mr Starmer or Sir Keir or whatever, that you're telling me that I was in charge of all of this, and as the man I'm responsible, you were in charge, you were the Director of Public Prosecutions when Jimmy Savile avoided prosecution, and he said exactly the same thing, Starmer. It didn't cross my desk. Sir Keir Starmer will always say that because he's alive.
Yeah,
the British people are on to Sir Keir Starmer, Richard, without any shadow of a doubt.
He will never take responsibility when things have gone wrong on his watch. It's always, just blame someone else or blame it. If you disagree with him, then basically you're on the fringe of the far right. That's his sort of standard smearing and labelling, and I think he is showing himself up to be the worst Prime Minister by some margin that any of us can ever remember.
Before I ask you one final question, I have to ask you this as well. The fallout between Elon Musk, and I thought Nigel quite rightly saying we're not having Tommy Robinson. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but Tommy Robinson is not everybody's cup of tea. Nigel's been quite strong about that. Were you shocked by Musk? And I have to ask you this. We're friends, but I've also a job to do. Is that what you get? Do you get your fingers burnt when you play with people as eccentric and as up as down as somebody like Elon Musk?
We're crystal clear. Mr. Musk is a brilliant entrepreneur. I love his products, but life would be boring if you agreed with your friends on everything. On this particular issue, we're absolutely clear. We disagree with Mr. Musk. We always said that if you wanted to donate and it was legal, then that's fine, but it comes without conditions. We're not going to sell our convictions and our principles, which we hold very strong, very dear, seared on our heart. Those are not available to be sold to anybody. And so that's the position. I gave my clear views about Mr. Robinson back at the end of October, and lots of people liked it and some people didn't. Well, that's the nature of politics. But I will repeat it just so everybody understands. We are a serious political party looking to win the next general election, and Mr. Robinson has nothing to do with us, will never have anything to do with us, and that is the end of that.
It's interesting because, it's interesting what you said about your response. I've had people say to me, oh, that's a big mistake. I've had more people say to me, that was prime ministerial. That was putting your foot down and being the leader that Farage needs to be. I'm not throwing this at you. Tell me if you don't want to comment. I don't know how long ago did this happen? 20 minutes ago, Howard Cox has tweeted. Do you know about this, Richard?
I don't. So
Howard Cox has tweeted that he's leaving Reform UK in an ex-post. He said he wants to talk about political issues without criticism. If you aren't ready, that's your choice, my friend. I just wondered whether there was a response from you to that.
I wasn't aware of that, and I'm sad to see Howard go. He and I have worked very closely over the first of all, the London mayoral campaign and then the general election campaign. But he's taken a different stance on, I think, this Robinson issue. And so, in a sense, we just agree to disagree. And it's as simple as that. And,
which is politics for you. I will say
that's the nature of it.
I will say one thing, right? I mean, he one of his criticisms. I mean, one of the questions would be: are members of Reform UK, as you want to quite rightly give the impression, there were criticisms in the last election, you weren't prepared. Are they being gagged? Are they being told what they can and can't talk about? Would that be a justifiable question?
Exactly the opposite. The point about Howard there is that that's what democracy and free speech is all about. Howard wants to talk about certain issues. He knows that if it's about that and it doesn't describe with our values, then he's going to have to do that from out with, because we're not going to tolerate that from within. It's as simple as that. But that's the joy of democracy.
In terms of people, final question. There is undoubtedly a feeling in the United Kingdom that this government, as you quite rightly said, is potentially the worst on record, that this man is out of his depth, that socialism will finally die in the next 4.5 years, and anybody with a brain cell will work out that it actually doesn't work. A Tory party that is a busted flush by anybody's sort of description, Richard, a Tory party that, despite what they say, millions of people in this country seemingly can't forgive for a long, long time. It seems to many people that Reform UK is the party that will benefit from that. I said something the other day which I was desperate to put to you and you weren't able to come on. I don't believe that you will be the next government, just hear me out, but I believe you will win a large number of seats and potentially hold the balance of power, which is pretty phenomenal when you consider that you will at that point be 6 years old. Is the dream to just get more and more seats? Is the dream to be the next government, or is the dream to see where this goes? And in terms of what the British people want, what are you feeling in the country with the British people as this almost crusade, if you like, gathers pace?
Well, dream is the wrong word, Jeremy. There's no point dreaming. We need to act, and we have a serious plan and a serious objective, and it's to way outperform your rather gloomy predictions. We are not mucking about. And yes, of course, you've got to be optimistic, and you might say it's overly ambitious. Well, we are ambitious, and we plan to form the next government, and the best way of doing that is to have a majority. And I tell you what, we are in for a tough time. As we speak, the financial markets are expressing their genuine concern about the state of the British economy, about what's happening after the blunder budget of all blunder budgets. And we are heading towards a recession. We are getting poorer by the day, by the week, by the month. And if that continues, people don't re-elect a government that's made them poorer. And people won't forgive or forget what the Conservatives did to this country, allowing mass, open-door, unskilled immigration that has caused unbelievable financial, cultural and social harm and damage. And I think people will say, enough's enough. Let's let reform come in, root and branch reform of the way everything works, and we will sort this out. We will fix it.
I have to say, though, in my defence, you had my vote last time, you'll have it next time. My gloomy prediction is because I'm a pessimist. I would like nothing more than all of those idiots to be removed and reform to be where it rightfully should be. Richard, thank you, sir. And I'm sorry, do you want to tell me off now about the Isabel thing or not?
No. We're having way too good a discussion.
I'm slightly concerned that you're going to ring me up and tell me off. Thank you so much indeed as ever. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness, talking about the grooming gang situation there and many other things. This is Talk Drive at 6:25. Kev O'Sullivan here from 7 o'clock, the amazing Petrie Hoskins from 10, and Mike Graham back tomorrow morning from 6 with Morning Glory. This is Talk Drive.
well, they've been in office for about 6 months, haven't they, really? They've had 14 years to get ready for office. I mean, in fairness, I suppose in reality, they've had 3 or 4 years to develop current and meaningful plans for the future of the NHS. And I must say that I was surprised that they're going to take until the spring to develop a plan for the NHS, and then there's going to be a whole load of consultation and mucking about.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:30 Wednesday night. Kev here from 7 o'clock. Loads of your calls will happen between now and 7. Keep them coming in. 0344 419 1000. You can text 87222. We'll get to you, I promise you. Start your message with the word talk. One of the other main news stories today is that more than a dozen hospitals have declared critical incidents as this flu outbreak worsens. Health leaders are warning the NHS is facing exceptionally high demand, with the number of cases already around double last year's peak. Around 5,000 beds a day are taken up by patients infected with the virus, and officials expect the crisis to deepen this week as children return to school. I have a personal interest in this story. We're delighted to be joined by Dr. Andrew Conway-Morris, ICU consultant. Andrew, welcome to Talk Drive. Thank you for coming on.
Hello.
Listen, I had this for 3 whole weeks, and I genuinely, and I'm not actually one of those, oh, it's man flu. I had chemo 12 years ago, and this flu was worse, and I genuinely mean that. My wife and I had it for 3 weeks, Andrew. Revolting. Awful.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of it around. It's an unpleasant strain of flu. It's the H1N1 strain that originally we found during the pandemic in 2009, has remained in circulation ever since. And it's been a resurgent year this year. We're at levels that we last saw 2 years ago in sort of 2022. And it's putting a lot of strain on the health service, as you can imagine.
Well, I have a friend, and his daughter is waiting for a very, very serious operation, and it's been cancelled twice this week for simple fact that there are not the staff, because of these illnesses, to carry out the operations. Now, I just want to talk to you in basic layperson's terms. You notice I didn't say layman's there, because somebody will jump up and down and say I'm sexist. I, in the end, had to go to the doctors and get some really strong antibiotics because I mean, it's awful. They'll tell you, oh, don't go to the doctors, don't do... It's bloody hard, though, because it's a real... What should people do? Help us out here, because it is everywhere, isn't it?
It is, and I think the thing to say is that most people who catch the flu will feel like you did, will feel, pretty rough and will feel unpleasant, but will get over it. And simple things to do, staying at home, not infecting other people, not helping it spread around, keeping yourself well hydrated, taking paracetamol and so forth. But there are a small proportion of people who will become very, very unwell, and it's important that they do seek medical advice in that situation. So, if somebody is starting to feel extremely unwell, more unwell than they've ever felt before, have very high fever, which is not coming down, cold, mottled hands, not passing urine, confused, things like that, they should get themselves to hospital.
That sounds like me on a daily basis, not passing urine and being confused. I'm just being honest, but you're right. I'm not trying to turn this into a medical thing. We had sores around our mouths. We had 100-degree temperature. It was awful, man. Awful. And you think, I don't want to be a pain because they'll tell me it's viral and you shouldn't have antibiotics, but you're like 2 weeks into taking everything known to man. You're like, I don't know what else to do.
No, absolutely. And of course, you're right that, antibiotics will not fix the flu, but a small proportion of people will get what we call a secondary infection. So they'll get an infection with the bacteria on top of the flu. Yeah. And that can make you very, very unwell. And again, in those situations, antibiotics are useful. Of course, the issue that we have is that with very widespread spread of influenza, even a small proportion of people becoming very unwell is quite a large number of people. A small percentage of a large number is still a large number. And that's what's causing the issues. I think most of the people who are presenting in hospital need to be there. It's not that people are turning up who don't need to be there. And of course, there's all the other things that go on at this time of year as well. So it's not just influenza. There's bacterial pneumonia, there's norovirus, there are all the other slips and trips and bumps that happen that land people in hospital. And unfortunately, we didn't have much capacity beforehand. I mean, we were in crisis last year and we didn't have anywhere near as much of a flu outbreak as we have this year. And that's just a illustration of the limited capacity that the NHS has to deal with surges. We run the whole time at close to 100% bed occupancy. And so it means that we're just not resilient when these sorts of things come along. If you went to an aircraft engineer and said, I'd like you to engineer a system that's going to run at 100% of the strain at all times, he would laugh at you and say, well,
I get that, but I guess
more than that.
I get that, and I'm not criticising consultants because I know the argument that will always. I love that the consultant's coughing now. It's brilliant. I love that. I get that. I get the whole argument, and I completely understand that. But I would say, when the pandemic hit, one of the big criticisms afterwards that we weren't prepared. Surely, with what happened last year and the pandemic, we could have been better prepared. So are you going to tell me it's money and I'm going to tell you it's money being wasted? Why are we struggling? Why are 12 hospitals declaring critical incidents when we should have learnt about all of this during the pandemic?
Well, so the first thing is that the way we managed things during the pandemic was essentially we became a single illness service. We just became a COVID service and we shut everything else down. Now, that was forced on us by the reality of the situation that we were in. But it did mean that an awful lot of people who needed elective or semi-elective care didn't get it during the pandemic. So what we've been trying to do since then is get on with all that work that still needed to be done. People are sore, people with cancers need to be operated on.
Of course they do.
It wasn't work that needed to be done. And we cannot afford to do that sort of shutdown again in order to manage the flu that's coming through. So what we're trying to do is essentially deal with surges in demand while still trying to keep as much of the elective operating going on. And as you've mentioned, your contact whose daughter's had her surgery cancelled, this is a real problem. It's either the staff are ill, which is, or the hospital beds are full of people with influenza and other things, and therefore you can't put two patients in one bed.
One question, you will understand this, to just finish, that I have had knowing you were coming on more than anything else. See if you can guess what people are asking me to ask you about this flu.
I have a horrible feeling it might be, how do I get to see my GP?
No, it's worse than that. Is it COVID? That's what everybody's asking. Is it COVID? That's what they're asking.
No, it's a different virus. It's the influenza virus. It's the same, as I say, same influenza virus as has been circulating for the last decade or so. There are new influenza viruses. There's a bird flu that you may be aware of that's particularly prevalent in the United States at the moment, which is currently restricted to animals, a few cases amongst humans. That is a potential concern, because if that starts to spread human to human, we may well see another pandemic. That would be of influenza, not COVID. There is a bit of COVID floating about at the moment, not as much as we've seen previously, and it's not a major cause of the.
The reason I asked you was, and my wife and I were talking about this yesterday. We both had COVID. That flu was 10 times worse. 10 times worse. Yeah. And we isolated for 10 bloody days with COVID, for goodness sake. Genuinely. Listen, a real pleasure. Yeah. I know where I'm coming when I need a prescription. Dr. Andrew Conway-Morris, ICU consultant. Thank you so much indeed. 22 minutes to 7 o'clock. Kev is here at 7. Petri at 10. Next, though, Sean Bell, military analyst. I'm so into talking to him about Donald Trump. We're coming back in 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
20 minutes to 7 o'clock. I told you before, former fighter pilot, now a top military analyst. A very good evening and Happy New Year to Sean Bell on Talk. How are you, Sean?
Happy New Year to you, Jeremy. Sorry to hear you're ill with the man flu, but glad you're
No, I'm not having that.
Struggling through.
I'm not having that. Military man or no military man. I know all those jokes. Always got the man flu. I'm telling you, seriously, hand on bleeding heart, with the missus, that was proper. That is worse than chemo. I had chemo. Now I'm going to stop you smiling.
Can you hear that tiny violin playing in the background?
Honestly, there's about as much sympathy in this bleeding studio. I know what you'll have been doing all Christmas. You've been having a few quiffs, won't you? I didn't have one drink, Belle. Not one.
That violin's getting even louder.
Welcome to the show. Now, I know you've never become political, and I'm allowed to say I thought it was fantastic yesterday. You're going to go, oh, my God, it's appalling. At a time when the United Kingdom is really under the cosh for many things that we don't need to go and that we've been speaking about all afternoon, across the sea, the pond, we have an incoming Republican president who unashamedly says, and I quote, I'm going to do everything to make America great again, make the people of America safe again, do whatever I have to do to make sure that we don't pay for everybody else. Yesterday, in this sort of rambling 72-minute press conference, which should have been about 5 minutes, he firstly refused to rule out military force to take the Panama Canal and Greenland. He said he'd quite like Canada to be the 51st state. He wanted the Gulf of Mexico to be named the Gulf of America. He then attacked NATO and said everybody should put in 5%, otherwise I might well do one. But perhaps my favourite moment was when he said, I hate wind farms, they're killing the whales. On a serious military point of view, I suspect that you'll disagree with this, but the American people will be quite happy to hear about somebody who's doing what it takes to talk them up, whereas we're in this country seemingly being talked down the whole time. What's your response to what Donald Trump talked about militarily?
I think it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I think if you're for the American domestic market, I suspect Trump's narrative is a breath of fresh air. But it's undoubtedly rattling the cages elsewhere. I mean, clearly a lot of this is designed as a precursor to the 20th of January inauguration. He's, this is coming, change is coming. He's clearly going to be a disruptive force. He clearly got frustrated in Trump 1.0 when he was first in power. He's not going to make those same mistakes again. And it's clear that he's got an agenda and he's going to drive through with it. Quite exactly what he does. I think there are some interesting angles. The Panama Canal always interests me because it was a really difficult project, finished with US money in 1914, jointly only handed over the Panamanian authorities at the end of the 1900s. But there's now about 14,500 vessels go through that each year. Do you know what the average toll is for each of those vessels?
Not a clue, boss man.
$54,000 for every single one of those ships, and that's an average.
$54,000 is a toll, and I think £3 on the Cardiff Bridge. How many boats are going through a day?
Well, I think it's about 14,500 a year now. So you can do the maths. But the point is, Trump believes that China has had some influence there, that American ships, and they are being exploited. I think the Greenland one is fascinating because that's a completely different tack. The Americans have a military base on Greenland. It's part of US Space Command, and it's part of that early warning ballistic missile threat system, because if Russia was to fire missiles, and of course, given what Russia has done in Ukraine, and of course what Iran has done against Israel, it's just heightened that threat. And that's another reason why he's turned around and said Greenland's important for national security. And of course, Canada becoming the 51st state, it even required, Trudeau to turn around and go, hang on a minute. But I do think all of this, the danger is it's window dressing. What's clear is Trump and, to some extent, Elon Musk are announcing their arrival, and the world waits in anticipation to see what's actually going to happen.
Absolutely. Two other stories I'd love your take on, Sean. The SAS has been accused today, late last night, of war crimes in Afghanistan by a rival unit chief. Your response to that, Sean?
This isn't the first time, Jeremy, we've been talking about this, and it's an incredibly difficult one. I spent 3 tours, 2 years of my life in Afghanistan. It was incredibly dangerous. I think we lost 454 British soldiers in that time, loads more that got badly damaged. The Taliban were ruthless at the time. The Special Forces did an invaluable job protecting British troops on so many occasions. I worked very close with them. Now, nobody's above the law. Let's be absolutely clear about that. But inevitably, SAS operations are covert. They're incredibly dangerous, intelligence-led, and it will be very difficult to prosecute anybody after the event. All I can say is my own experience. I'm just very glad these elite Special Forces are on our side. That's really my bottom line.
I think the SAS is the best in the world, and you are absolutely right when you say that there will be always criticism. But hope to God this country, which seems to be getting woker by the minute and weirder in many ways, does not turn on an organisation that seriously has done so much good under the radar across the world that people don't even know about. Final story today. Love your take on this. Defence companies have stopped attending university careers fairs and events because of security fears over protesters affecting recruitment at the time of heightened global threats. Firms making weapons for the MOD and for export have been effectively excluded from attending events on campus at some universities or forced to cancel themselves, raising concern the national security could be put at risk because of a result of a lack of skills shortage in vital industries, because apparently students associate the military companies with violence, and that's what, honest to God, what's happening, Sean Bell?
Yeah, but this isn't a news story, is it? I mean, let's face it, I don't know, when I was at university a million years ago, you were an idealist when you're a youngster, and I think a lot of the idealists, if you remember, CND was rampaging around.
I don't think they have their own minds anymore. I think they're all bloody sheep.
No, I don't buy into that. But I do think, therefore, that a lot of defence firms, particularly with wars raging around the world, particularly with Ukraine, particularly with Israel, which has been incredibly emotive, it doesn't surprise me. In this period of time, defence is a very big employer in this country. I do understand why they're nervous at the moment, but quite frankly, there will be a lot of jobs available in this country for the youngsters and throughout our working population. I think this is a mere blip because of the current situation around the world.
There's always one thing when we have you on. You're so smart as carrots, and you always speak so brilliantly. I have a question for you, though. I passed 60 this year, and what should I expect?
Oh, ouch. It's not the years, it's the mileage, Jezza, and you've done a few miles. That's all I can say.
That's my boy. Good luck. Thank you so much indeed for being on. Sean Bell, former fighter pilot and now top military analyst, right here on Talk Drive. What is it? 12 minutes to... We'll try and get some calls on after this break. We're coming back. Saturday night, and you lucky people have got 4 of Talk's mightiest personalities in one room. I mean, what could go right? Me, Jeremy Kyle, Michael Graham, Julia, I'm Not Grumpy Tonight, Hartley Brewer and Kev O'Sullivan. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Jules is smiling.
I think they've made us all look a lot better than we actually look.
There is that.
ask for next time I go to a hairdresser.
I'd like to talk about Jez's nipples on his...
You got nipples? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got nipples.
I don't know.
I didn't think you had nipples. I assumed you just came in an egg.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Achieved something just then that I haven't seen in 3 years of being at Talk. Amy, who smiles her way through everything, is now looking mightily hacked off. 0344 419 1000. Talk, I'm sick of Starmer saying he didn't hit my desk. I'd like to know what damn well did hit his desk when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He missed Savile, Al Fayed and the grooming gangs. What the hell was he doing? I don't know who that's from. Hello to David Thomas. JK, democratisation. How's reforms democratisation going? What are the timescales? Let us know. Gemma Atkinson, I think the Labour rebels will rebel. If the PM is unpopular, the spin doctors will start. David H, there must be serving police officers, Jez, who know what has gone on, what is still going on. Similarly, social workers. It's time for police officers with the conscience of Peter Blexley to come forward and give everyone the evidence. Dave in Oxfordshire. Dave, good evening. Hello to, I've no idea. I think the people who have brushed under the carpet this grooming a scam should be ashamed and held accountable for their total lack of respect for these poor kids. The government should bring back hanging for this type of crime. Mark Stafford. Jezza, if you're handsome... no, you're that handsome, you look like Gonzo off the Muppets. That's Mark from Bridgend. It's from Wales, though. Chris is in Essex. Must point out when discussing the good points and places of California, both Jeremy Vine and Mike Graham forgot to mention the best eating experience, In-N-Out Burger. Jeremy bleeding Vine, yeah? 3 years. I've never driven a cycle in my life or worn Lycra or one of them stupid shirts. Hello to Neil in Darlington. I'm really offended now, Jeremy Vine. Oh, my God, Neil in Darlington. Oh, my God, Jez, that poor man John and his daughter, that has completely incensed me. How on earth is an early call? Could they be let down by the police and the establishment like that? What has our country come to? It is unbelievable. And this from Gary Mitchell. Jez, the West Ham fan, you don't need Graham Potter, you know, bleeding Harry Potter. Thank you. To Crawley in Sussex. Paul, you're on Talk Drive. Only 2 minutes, my friend. We're running out of time. What you got?
OK, Jez, I'll be quick as possible. Hope your flu gets better soon and you get down to Bournemouth tonight.
Thank you.
It's about the raping gangs and everything.
Yes.
Now, if we had an outbreak of bank robberies all over the country or an outbreak of terrorists all over the country, wouldn't we have a task force to do something about it now? I mean, we had a little bit of that in the summer. Obviously, I didn't condone the rioting, but the government jumped on that straight away.
Of course they did, and they labelled it far right.
Yeah. Well, I'm centralist, but a bit on the right, I must admit. But wouldn't it be great? You know, for goodness sake, I'll give her a lifeline here. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, if she stood up and said, "I'm gonna head a task force,"
but she's not going to, and I'll tell you why.
I know.
And the thing that worries me, Paul, and I'll finish the show as I started the show, and I am not into conspiracy theories, and I'm into allowing everybody to have their say and have an opinion, but what concerns me as a nearly 60-year-old father of 6, and I'm being completely honest, is that the fact that for 20-plus years something as abhorrent as children being raped. I don't care whether it's by Muslim men, Englishmen. I don't care where you come from. If that is not an absolute no-go and should result in the worst criminal charges and imprisonment, right, then there is something fundamentally bloody wrong with the United Kingdom. And what makes me more concerned, apart from those poor victims, is that I fear this has to go so high and so deep into the establishment because they don't seem to want to do anything about it, mate. That's my point. That's my point.
But because the thing is, I mean, rape is a crime. It doesn't matter who does it. No. It's a crime.
But then we know in Rotherham the police didn't want to stir up cultural issues.
I remember you were speaking earlier, about an hour and a half ago, about that very nice man John from Lancashire, his daughter, who was there, and they said, let it go.
They said you'll be determined racist if you do that. I got to move on. Happy New Year, Pauline Crawley. Very quickly, West London. Kirsten, you've got 1 minute. What you got?
Hi. So I don't think that that Keir Starmer should step anywhere.
Sorry, darling. I can't.
New inquiry.
Kirsten, sorry. I literally, I don't. Can you just put your mouth away from the phone a bit? Sorry, I cannot hear anything at all. Go on.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can indeed, darling.
Perfect. So, no, I don't think that Keir Starmer, anyone that was at some point involved in the scandal, needs to be close to that. I had an experience with the NHS. They order an independent, air quote, independent inquiry and investigation.
Yeah.
And of course, the NHS came out as completely clean.
I agree with you, and I also agree that this inquiry needs to be completely independent and run by somebody who's possibly not involved. Not the police, not social services, not politics, nothing like that. It needs to be a complete independent. We're going to fit one more in Rotherham. William, you've literally got a minute. Will, what you got?
Hi. Basically, as somebody that's lived in a town that's been so jaded and torn apart by such scandals, we also had the town was awarded the Children's Culture City Award or some rubbish like that. Wow. That's how out of touch these politicians are. They do not care about what the people have gone through, and they will not care, and neither do the police, in my opinion.
But you see, this is my issue from the very beginnings of this show, right? We can talk about how we need better politicians, better police, better social services. I don't morally understand why it is more... how anybody, whether you're the bleeding president, king, down to the... I don't care. How do you not find that so disgusting that you want to rid the world of people who would even contemplate that?
And I fully agree, and that's the reason why I've always held the belief, and it's only grown with conviction, that what needs to happen is that people should be able to fund their own police. Because the police that we are given do not want to do the job. We should fund our own politicians.
It's a theory, William. I'm going to have to go. We appreciate you calling. Rather a busy old show. Kevin O'Sullivan gets into the studio without walking in front of the camera and gets his thing in the relevant hole.
Things are getting better.
It's all going on here. We had Richard Tice on talking about Tommy Robinson. Yeah. Tommy Robinson's people have retweeted that. I'm just waiting for Elon Musk and I'm going to retire.
Yeah, this Tommy Robinson issue is a problem for reform, I'll tell you.
Tell me how you see it, because you're more intelligent than me.
No, that's not true, Jeremy.
A lot of people will agree with what Tommy Robinson said. He's obviously in prison for a civil case, well, a criminal. It's a difficult one, isn't it?
It's difficult for reform. It's difficult for reform because they well know that among their ranks, many Reform UK members have a lot of time for Tommy Robinson. Now, I understand why Nigel Farage and Richard Tice are trying to distance themselves from Robinson, but by so doing, they alienate a lot of their own supporters. So they are walking a kind of tightrope and they're in very, very awkward territory. And Nigel Farage kind of hilariously finds himself cast as the left-wing establishment member, because that's what a lot of people are thinking about him now.
Wow. What you got, kiddo? What a day that was on the show as well.
We're going to kick off with a story that I broke last night, but we didn't have time to put any meat on the bones. It's a guy called Curry Abdul Rauf, 55 years old. He went to prison for 6 years for raping and trafficking a 15-year-old girl, having sex with her himself, plus other girls. He was the leader of a gang of 9. Now, when he came out of jail in 2014, the judges recommended he was immediately deported back to his native Pakistan.
Still here?
He's still here.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. One, he renounced his Pakistani citizenship, so our judges said, oh, poor man, we can't leave him stateless.
Did he become a Christian?
Why not? Who cares?